Billionaire fortune, my sexy wife. Jiangju. It was late autumn. It had been almost half a year since Chen Yuan graduated from university, and most of his resumes had gone unanswered. Some companies did give him an interview opportunity, but the salary mentioned during the interview was far from the salary promised in the recruitment brochure. He once suspected that those hours were only trying to meet some strange KPIs. It was hard to find a job, but life had to go on. Chen Yuan found several part-time jobs, and handing out flyers was one of them. It was Sunday, and he was handing out flyers for water purifiers. His name was written in the lower right corner of the flyers. If someone bought a water purifier with this flyer, he could get a 10% commission. Chen Yuan liked this job very much. Not only could he earn money from handing out flyers, but he could also get sales commissions. People who bought water purifiers offline were generally housewives or middle-aged and elderly people. Chen Yuan thought that today was the weekend, and there were many middle-aged and elderly people in the park, so the probability of a deal was much higher than just sticking in on the street. So he rode a shared bicycle to Qinghu Park. Chen Yuan had been here many times before, but it felt like there were more people today than before. Especially in the park square, there were quite a few people gathered. Walking over, he saw that it was a matchmaking activity. Chen Yuan was holding a stack of flyers in his hand, and he passed by the matchmaking signs on the ground and found them very interesting. Female, 37 years old, master's degree, unmarried, 160 centimeters tall, 300,000 yuan annual salary, owns a house and a car, looking for an unmarried man with comparable conditions, good personality, good looks, preferably no older than 40 years old. There was also a photo of the woman below. Her temperament is pretty good, but... Chen Yuan shook his head secretly. The woman had good conditions and her requirements for the man were not high. There seemed to be nothing wrong with her. But if the man had such comparable conditions, it would not be difficult to find a girl under 30. Why did he have to find a 37-year-old woman? Chen Yuan had never been in a matchmaking program, and he found these quite interesting, so he walked forward. He saw another matchmaking sign. Male, 57 years old, height 170 centimeters, high school graduate, factory security guard, monthly salary 3,500, divorced, son belongs to the woman, has a house but no car, looking for a woman under 45 years old, good looking, stable income, accept divorce, but cannot bring children, and the ex-husband is not in this city. The following is also attached with photos. The elder brother is wearing a security uniform, standing straight, and is also vigorous. However, Chen Yuan thought that if this elder brother can't meet a woman with a mental illness, he will probably be lonely until old. Of course, unless this elder brother has some special skills. It's fun to be lively, but work is more important. After Chen Yuan took a quick look at a few more, he went to distribute flyers. Big sister, let me know about the water purifier. There is a promotion in the store now. Get 10 off for every 200, and get 200 off for every 2,000. Tomato is a big brand, worry-free after-sales service. If there are any quality problems within half a year, you can directly replace it with a new one, it is trustworthy. Another corner of the square. A woman wearing high heels and thick black stockings looked at the men's marriage advertisements and shook her head all the way. My God, what is this? What about a 28-year-old elite man who only wants to marry into the family? The woman must be rich and beautiful, not less than 170 centimeters tall, not more than 110 pounds in weight, preferably not more than 32 years old, gentle and tolerant, parents-in-law cannot live together, preferably a villa of more than 500 square meters as a wedding house, a nanny, the nanny must be no more than 40 years old, and she will not do housework or work after marriage. At least 2 cars worth more than 500,000 yuan must be provided for daily use. What are you doing? Making a wish? Are you a golden cicader descended to the earth, or are all men in the world dead? It's so abominable. The woman gritted her teeth in anger and wanted to kick over the marriage advertisement. Beautiful aunt, this kind of marriage advertisement is just for fun, don't take it seriously. At some point, Chen Yuan came over. When the woman heard the word auntie, her brows slightly frowned, but when she turned her head, her brows immediately relaxed. What a tall, handsome, fair, and sunny little brother. Little brother, are you here to find a wife too? The woman asked curiously. Chen Yuan shook his head. I just graduated from college, and I'm not old enough to find a wife yet. I'm here to hand out flyers. As he said that, Chen Yuan handed over a flyer. Oh. The woman symbolically took it in her hand, looking at the tall and handsome boy in front of her, and suddenly an idea came to her. Little brother, do you have a girlfriend? Chen Yuan was stunned. Could this beautiful aunt be interested in me? Although he could completely accept a sister-brother relationship, the age of the aunt in front of him seemed much older than him. It was a bit inappropriate. The woman seemed to have guessed what Chen Yuan was thinking, and she was a little amused. Little brother, you don't think I like you, do you? Chen Yuan looked embarrassed. Auntie, I don't mean that. It doesn't matter. The woman interrupted him with a smile, looked at Chen Yuan again, and asked eagerly, you should have just graduated and haven't found a job yet. Otherwise, you wouldn't come out to distribute flyers. He, I have a good job, 3,000 yuan a day, daily payment, are you interested? Chen Yuan frowned secretly. Auntie, you are not kidding me, are you? 3,000 yuan a day, and daily payment, I don't believe that pie in the sky will fall, and I won't do anything illegal. As he said, Chen Yuan turned around and left. The temptation of 3,000 yuan was great, but he felt that the woman in front of him was not a good person. Maybe she was trying to coax him into being a gigolo. Seeing Chen Yuan was about to leave, the woman hurriedly grabbed him. Good brother, don't leave in a hurry, listen to me first. After pulling and tugging in public, Chen Yuan blushed a little, stopped and said, okay, then you say it. The woman breathed a sigh of relief and said slowly, the thing is, I have a good sister who has been single for many years. She is busy with her career. I urged her to get married early, but she refused. The key is that she has never tasted the taste of love and can't experience the happiness of having a man, so I think I don't have to rush to get married, but I must let her taste the taste of love first. If you are willing, just as I said just now, 3,000 yuan a day, daily payment. Don't worry, just love, not get married, don't have any psychological burden. How? The woman's beautiful eyes moved, looking at Chen Yuan with expectation. Chen Yuan thought for a moment, and the other party gave him the feeling that she was not joking. It seems that he will not lose anything if he only loves but does not get married. I can agree. Chen Yuan nodded, and then changed the subject, but auntie, you have to tell me about her details first. Oh? Well. The woman was a little embarrassed. Brother, it's like this, I came up with this idea on a whim, and I haven't gotten her consent yet. I have to wait for her consent before I can tell her. Of course, I will try my best to convince her. I will give you an answer tonight at the latest. Let's add a contact number first. If she agrees, I will tell you her details. If you think it's appropriate, we'll make a deal. If you think it's not appropriate, then let it go. But there is one thing I can tell you first. She has a gentle personality, is prettier than me, and is caring. Chen Yuan looked at the woman in front of him. If the full score is 10, using his own aesthetics, he can give her at least 9 points. That good sister is prettier than her, and is at least a 9.5-point woman. Good things come from heaven. Thinking of this, Chen Yuan was looking forward to it. Chapter 2, The Chaos Must Be Rectified. Okay. Chen Yuan nodded in agreement. Let's do it the way auntie suggests. Being able to date a 9.5 rated aunt with a high salary, what a great deal. The two exchanged contact information. Auntie, my name is Chen Yuan. Please save it. The woman nodded. Got it. By the way, my name is Wang Shitong, please save it too. All right, Tong auntie. Chen Yuan smiled and addressed her with a cheeky tone. Wang Shitong smiled with satisfaction and then tentatively asked, little brother, is your health okay? No issues, right? Chen Yuan patted his chest confidently. Of course, no problem, all solid. I even have abs. Do you want to check the goods first? As he said this, Chen Yuan started to lift his shirt. Wang Shitong glanced at him, nearly drooling. If it weren't for her best friend, she would have kept him for herself. Well, little brother, I still have some business to take care of at the store. You stay busy, I'll bring you good news later. Okay. Chen Yuan nodded and waved his hand. Tong auntie, take care. After Wang Shitong walked away, Chen Yuan turned back and continued handing out flyers. Meanwhile, Wang Shitong got back in her car and eagerly dialed a number. Hey, Yang Ning, are you up yet? Oh, I'm doing yoga. You need to treat me to steak for lunch, and it has to be homemade by you. I've got some huge news for you. Oh, I can't say it over the phone, I'll tell you when we meet at noon. It's not my good news, it's your good news, I made it happen, and you'll owe me. I swear on our 10 years of friendship that it's definitely good news. Stop asking questions, see you later, bye. Wang Shitong hung up and took a deep breath. Last time, when I tried to introduce someone to you, you didn't like him because he was too smart, or you didn't like his potbelly, or you said he was too rough. Now, I introduce you to a guy with a six-pack and a sunny personality, you can't reject him, right? Wang Shitong muttered to herself smugly before starting the car and heading to her shop. Near noon. After finishing handing out the flyers, Chen Yuan received a call from the store saying that 6 people had used his flyers to buy water purifiers, and he would earn over 300 in commissions today. That's great, thanks, Sister Wang. Chen Yuan hung up the phone with gratitude, looked around the plaza, and said to himself, as expected, I'm just too clever. No, I should treat myself. Chen Yuan smacked his lips, grabbed a shared bike by the side of the road, and headed to the nearby market. He had learned to cook in middle school. Whether it was good or not, he didn't know, but as long as he liked it, that was enough. And now that he hadn't officially started working, his savings couldn't support frequent meals at restaurants. In the market, Chen Yuan shopped for over half an hour, bought all the ingredients, and was about to head back when he was drawn to a woman in her 40s, with an exceptional aura, standing at a vegetable stall. Boss, how much are the peas? The woman asked the vendor, her voice soft and melodious. The vendor looked at her and replied, $20 per pound. The woman frowned, hesitated, and was about to weigh out some peas. At that moment, Chen Yuan couldn't help but step forward. This price is a bit too much. Boss, the peas are only 12 yuan per pound, but you're charging her 20? That's a rip-off. You can't just charge her more because she looks wealthy. You should have a conscience in business. Chen Yuan had learned it the hard way before. It was in his hometown near the New Year. He was at a fruit stall, and when a lady asked the price of fruit, it was 5 yuan per pound. When it was his turn, the price suddenly went up to 8 yuan. That was a typical case of price gouging based on the customer's appearance. Boss, how can you do business like this? The woman realized she almost got scammed and was also a little upset. The vendor, knowing he was in the wrong, lowered his head and didn't say anything. Seeing this, Chen Yuan didn't say anything more. He glanced at the woman beside him, couldn't help but swallow, and turned to leave. He had seen many young aunts and pretty aunts, but this one, with her maturity, grace, and elegance, was a true beauty. It was his first time encountering someone like her. He was afraid that if he looked at her any longer, she might think he was a creep. Before the woman could thank him, she hurried to catch up as she saw him leaving. Hey, little brother, wait a second. As she spoke, she caught up with him. Auntie, is there something else? Chen Yuan asked politely. The woman smiled warmly. Thank you for helping me earlier. My name is Shenyang Ning. I don't know your name yet. It was nothing. Chen Yuan smiled back. He didn't think he had done anything that big to help and didn't feel like revealing his name either. Still, I must thank you. Shenyang Ning nodded seriously, noticing that Chen Yuan was holding a lot of groceries. She asked, you seem to know a lot about vegetable prices. Do you shop here often? Yeah. Chen Yuan nodded slightly. I started cooking when I was in elementary school. But after I went to college, I ate in the cafeteria. Now that I've graduated, I can't rely on the cafeteria anymore, so I cook for myself. Shenyang Ning was surprised and frowned. You started cooking in elementary school. What about your family? Didn't they cook for you? Upon hearing this, a shadow crossed Chen Yuan's eyes. I'm an abandoned child. My adoptive father picked me up. He's over 40, never married, and raised me like his own son. He had to work a lot, so I had to take care of myself. Shenyang Ning nodded slowly, feeling some sympathy. She bit her lip. You seem so bright and full of energy. I didn't know it's been so tough for you. Your adoptive father must have had a hard time too, playing both the role of father and mother. But now that you've graduated, your father must be able to relax a little. Chen Yuan shook his head sadly. He wasn't lucky. Just 2 days before my college admission letter came, he had an accident at work and passed away. Chen Yuan didn't he know why he told a stranger this. But after saying it, he felt strangely relieved. R. Ning opened her mouth in shock, her face filled with apology. I'm so sorry, I didn't know. It's okay. Chen Yuan smiled. It's all in the past. Auntie, if there's nothing else, I'll head back now. All right. Ning nodded and waved goodbye as Chen Yuan walked away. Later that day, when Chen Yuan returned to his rented apartment, the landlord, a man in his 50s, appeared outside the door holding a bunch of keys. Hey, Chen Yuan, you're back just in time. I just wanted to let you know that starting next month, the rent will increase by 200 yuan. Chen Yuan was stunned and frowned. Wait, I've only been here for 3 months, and you're raising the rent. The landlord's face immediately darkened. What are you talking about? My places are rented for 6 months at a time. You said you just graduated and didn't have money, so you could only pay for 3 months, but I agreed to it because I felt sorry for you. Now, the contract is up. If you want to renew, you'll have to go with the new rate. Do you still want to renew the lease? Chapter 3, A Heartfelt Plea. The contract hasn't expired yet, so let me think it over. Chen Yuan said, closing the door behind him. The landlord furrowed his brow and called out from outside, You've got 2 days to decide. But let me remind you, if you're renewing, the lease must be for at least 6 months. Elsewhere. At the Spring River Villa complex, a red Mercedes slowly pulled up to Villa number 17. The person getting out of the car was Wang Shitong. Yanning, I'm here. After getting out of the car, Wang Shitong took 2 bottles of red wine from the trunk and walked up to the door, changing into slippers as she entered. In the kitchen, Xin Yanning, who had already seasoned the steak and set it aside to marinate, was washing peas. Upon hearing Wang Shitong's voice, she responded, Here? I'm in the kitchen. Wang Shitong placed the wine on the dining table and went into the kitchen. Seeing Xin Yanning washing peas with a distracted look on her face, she tilted her head and asked, What's wrong? You seem distracted. Huh? Xin Yanning snapped out of it. Oh, it's nothing. I just had a little incident at the market when I was buying peas. What kind of incident? Wang Shitong asked with sudden interest. Xin Yanning smiled helplessly and recounted the events at the market. Wang Shitong nodded thoughtfully, so that's what happened. The young man seems pretty warm-hearted. Upon hearing this, Wang Shitong became even more curious. By the way, was he handsome? As lifelong friends, Wang Shitong's raised eyebrow instantly gave Xin Yanning a hint of her intentions. Handsome? What good is that? It won't put food on the table. Not putting food on the table, but at least it's good to look at. Wang Shitong swayed her head proudly. He helped you, didn't you get his WeChat or send him a red envelope as a thank you? Xin Yanning frowned, What are you talking about? He wouldn't even tell me his name, let alone give me his contact info. Besides, it wasn't a big deal. If I chased him for his number, he'd probably think I have some improper intentions as an older woman. Wang Shitong clicked her tongue, I don't like hearing you say that. What older woman? Stop putting yourself down so much. Wang Shitong's gaze moved over Xin Yanning's body. With that bust, that slim waist, those curvy hips, those beautiful legs, that face, that elegance, there is no one in all of Jiangsu who's as perfect as you. If you like that young man, it'd be his blessing. All right, I know I'm beautiful, no need to go on. Xin Yanning quickly interrupted before Wang Shitong could go any further. By the way, what was all that mysterious stuff you were up to this morning? Wang Shitong sighed, all this for you. I heard that Qinghu Park was hosting a matchmaking event, so I skipped my nap and went to help you pick someone out. Xin Yanning put the peas aside and started to cook the steak. So, did you find someone suitable for me? Sigh. Wang Shitong sighed heavily. All I found were some weirdos or guys with strange requirements. There wasn't a decent one among them. Xin Yanning chuckled at this, then why were you saying something about good news on the phone? Wang Shitong suddenly became serious, you know the old saying, when one door closes, another opens. Just when I was feeling totally discouraged, bam, a turn of fate. Xin Yanning flipped the steak in the pan, then glanced at her, what happened? Wang Shitong leaned forward and lowered her voice, that's when I saw a young man. Tall, I'd say at least 1.83 meters. And he's really handsome, no exaggeration. Really handsome. Definitely more handsome than the guy you met at the market, and he totally fits your taste. And then? Chen Yuan asked. How old is he? Wang Shitong replied, just graduated from university, so he should be around 23. Only 23? Chen Yuan was speechless. I'm 40 years old, and if I go back 100 years, my son would probably be older than him. Wang Shitong was unfazed. Isn't he that great? He could be your son during the day and your husband at night. You wouldn't have to feed an extra mouth, and you'd save money. Chen Yuan? Wang Shitong seized the opportunity when Chen Yuan was confused. True love doesn't care about age. No way, that's just crazy. Chen Yuan rejected it repeatedly. Even if we somehow manage to be together, what about 20 years later? He'd only be in his 40s while I'd be in my 60s, an old lady. Men bloom at 41, and you want him to face an old lady every day when he could be with someone younger. Even if he could accept it, I wouldn't be able to. Wang Shitong laughed heartily. Yanning, what are you thinking? I haven't even said much yet, and you've already planned out everything for the next 20 years. If I said anything else, would you already have a spot picked out for us to be buried in? Chen Yuan paused, then flipped the steak in the pan again. After joking around, Wang Shitong became serious again. Yanning, I'm introducing him to you just so you can experience the feeling of being in a relationship, not because I'm trying to get you to marry him. You've been divorced from Wang Bing for 10 years. During those years, you focused on your career and avoided men. Now that you're successful in your career, it's time to think about your later years. Do you really plan to grow old alone? Chen Yuan silently placed the steak on a plate, sprinkling some seasoning. Then she picked up the peas, drained the water, and placed them beside the steak. She added a bit of rosemary for garnish. Wang Shitong wasn't a fan of noodles, so just the simple steak was enough for her. Yanning, I'm talking to you, don't keep silent like that. Wang Shitong grew impatient when Chen Yuan didn't respond. Chen Yuan carried the 2 plates of steak to the dining table. Who would want to grow old alone? But finding someone reliable isn't that easy. Wang Shitong followed her into the dining room, put the red wine she had brought into the wine cabinet, and took out the unfinished bottle from the last time. She poured a little into each glass and said, Yeah, it's hard to find someone you can trust with your life, but you have to start somewhere. You can't just wait for it to fall from the sky. That young man I just told you about, he's really good. If you're willing, he's up for it. Wang Shitong earnestly continued, the reason I'm finding you a younger guy is so you can relive the feeling of being in love. If I introduced you to some middle-aged man, it would just been settling down, and that's pretty dull. Don't you think? Chen Yuan took 2 sets of cutlery from the sterilizer and handed 1 set to Wang Shitong. What you're saying isn't without reason, but at my age, I just want someone to share my life with. As for that young man, I think I'll pass. Really not considering it. Wang Shitong sighed regretfully. She still wanted to persuade Chen Yuan. How about this, why don't you 2 meet first? Spend a few days together, and if it clicks, continue. If it doesn't, then we'll drop it. What do you think? Chapter 4, Do you want me to be his mother? Sunny apartment. After dinner, Chen Yuan sat on the small sofa on the balcony, looking at the busy streets below. He had been in this city for more than 4 years, but at this moment he felt like an outsider, and couldn't help feeling a little melancholy. I haven't found a job yet, and the rent is about to expire, and they are going to raise the rent. He took out his cell phone, stared at the only 5,000 yuan in his bank card, and sighed secretly. This amount of money is only enough to pay the rent for the next 6 months, and after paying the rent, I will be penniless. If I don't find a job soon, even food and clothing might become a problem. Thinking of this, he suddenly remembered the beautiful aunt in thick black stockings he met in the park in the morning. It would be great if her good sister could agree, so that she could earn 3,000 yuan a day. By then, problems that can be solved with money will no longer be problems. Chen Yuan opened WeChat and saw that Wang Shitong had not sent any message. It doesn't matter. Just give me an answer tonight at the latest. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, forget it. Chen Yuan muttered to himself, then stood up and prepared to go out. He had a part-time job at a milk tea shop in the afternoon. The other side. After eating and drinking, Wang Shitong took a nap in Chen Yuan's villa. When she woke up, it was almost dark. Wang Shitong looked out the window in shock, then got up and got out of bed. Yang Ning. Wang Shitong called a few times in the corridor and looked downstairs, but it seemed that no one was home. So he called Shen Yanning. Hey, Yang Ning, where have you been? At this moment, Shen Yanning was getting off a taxi at the entrance of a shopping mall and said, I'm doing something outside and I'm about to go back. Are you awake? Do you want some milk tea? I'll bring you a cup. Okay, see you later. After hanging up the phone, Shen Yanning walked towards the milk tea shop next to the mall entrance. Hello, 1 cup of taro bubble milk tea, 1 cup of red date ginger milk tea, thank you. As Shen Yanning was talking, she suddenly felt that the employee in front of her who was wearing a mask looked familiar. Hey, are you the brother who was at the vegetable market this morning? Hearing this, Chen Yuan smiled with curved eyebrows and eyes. Aunt Shen, it's me. Shen Yanning smiled in amazement and said, oh, what a coincidence, we just met in the morning and we ran into each other again in the afternoon. Have you always been working here? I've been here a few times before, but I never saw you. While working, Chen Yuan explained, I've been working part-time here recently. I haven't found a job yet after graduating. Oh, so that's how it is. Shen Yanning nodded. After a while, 2 cups of milk tea were ready. Chen Yuan handed it over. After Shen Yanning paid the bill, she took the milk tea and asked, by the way, what's your name? You refused to tell me when I asked you this morning. Are you not going to tell me now? Chen Yuan smiled awkwardly. Aunt Shen, my last name is Chen, you can just call me Xiao Chen. All right. Shen Yanning nodded, smiled and waved her hand, saying, looking forward to seeing you next time. Okay. Chen Yuan also nodded and watched Shen Yanning walk away. At this time, Chen Yuan's partner, a small girl, tilted her head upwards curiously and asked, Chen Yuan, when someone asked you your name, why didn't you tell them? Chen Yuan said, I don't know her well, why should I tell her? The girl was surprised and asked, you don't know her? Chen Yuan looked at the girl's surprised expression and felt confused. Why, is she some big shot? The girl said excitedly, oh my god, she is a big shot. As she spoke, the girl looked at Chen Yuan in confusion. No, Chen Yuan, you have never left the campus in your 4 years of college. Even she doesn't know about it, then you have spent these years in Jiangsu in vain. Chen Yuan was somewhat speechless and asked, so who is she? The girl's expression was excited. She is the boss of Xingchen Capital, a well-known company in Jiangsu, and her personal net worth exceeds 10 billion. Chen Yuan was stunned, so fierce. The girl shook her head and said, it's useless. You really went to college for nothing. The other side. Spring River Villa. After waking up, Wang Shitong was fiddling with the flowers and plants in the yard. When she saw Shen Yanning coming back from outside, she turned around and went to greet her. Yang Ning, you are finally back. Which one is mine? Wang Shitong looked at the milk tea in her hand. Shen Yanning handed over the cup of taro pearl milk tea. This is yours. No, I want to drink your cup. Wang Shitong shook her head and reached out to take another cup. Shen Yanning said, this cup is ginger juice. I have my period these 2 days. Oh, then I'll drink this one. Wang Shitong smiled and obediently took the cup of taro pearl milk tea. The two of them went into their house while drinking milk tea. Back in the house, Wang Shitong saw Shen Yanning always secretly laughing from time to time, and suspected that there was something fishy going on, so she asked, Yanning, what did you do this afternoon? Shen Yanning walked towards the sofa while drinking milk tea and said, I didn't do anything. I just met the CEO of a startup company. Wang Shitong seemed to be thinking, did you guys have a pleasant chat? Shen Yanning nodded, well, it's pretty good. I plan to invest 2 million in them. What else? No, I'll be back after the chat. Wang Shitong hissed, didn't you find a park to take a walk together? Shen Yanning frowned slightly, why are you taking a walk? Are you crazy? Wang Shitong was puzzled and asked, so you exchanged 2 million for a large portion of their shares? Shen Yanning smiled and said, no, just 10 points. Wang Shitong said, 2 million is only worth 10 points for a startup company. What's there to be happy about? Shen Yanning pursed her lips and smiled, guess who I saw? Wang Shitong curled her lips and sipped her milk tea. You know so many people. How would I know who you saw? Shen Yanning showed a smug look on her face. She took off her shoes with great interest, sat cross-legged on the sofa, took a pillow and put it in her arms, and said, as I told you, the young man I met in the vegetable market this morning, I saw him again when I bought milk tea just now. He works there. Wait. Wang Shitong suddenly interrupted her. What are you so excited about? Shen Yanning said, don't you think this is fate? Wang Shitong frowned. What fate? Don't tell me you are interested in that boy. What are you thinking? Shen Yanning shook her head. I just simply think this is a kind of fate. Wang Shitong murmured and shook her head. I have known you for 10 years, and I have never seen you believe in fate. Why do you start to believe in it now? Yang Ning. As she spoke, Wang Shitong became more serious. Yang Ning, let me remind you that you are also a big shot in Jiangzhou's business community. There are many people who know you. Don't fall for someone's beauty trap. Shen Yanning was stunned. Beauty trap? That shouldn't be the case, right? Wang Shitong straightened her back and said in a serious tone, how could it not be? Let me ask you, when he spoke up for justice at the market this morning, did that count as actively approaching you? Since the establishment of Xingchen Capital, who has approached you without scheming behind your back? Shen Yanning thought about it and still felt that it was not necessary. She said, those people approached me just to get me to invest in their company, but what could a young man who just graduated from college get from approaching me? To get me to be his mother. Chapter 5, Sudden Interview Notice. That is hard to say. Wang Shitong shook her head, looking serious. Today, there are too many college students who want to take shortcuts. Yang Ning, you are a mature person, don't fall into the hands of a young boy. Okay, let's not talk about her anymore. Shen Yanning didn't want to continue on this topic. Will you stay tonight? Wang Shitong looked up at the clock on the wall. It was already very late. She said, it's getting dark. I'd better stay with you. Good. Shen Yanning smiled and nodded, then stood up and put on her slippers. I'll go cook. Bobo. Wang Shitong kissed him twice in the air, then suddenly remembered something and followed Shen Yanning to the kitchen. Yanning, what I told you at noon, did you really not consider it at all? Shen Yanning smiled and shook her head. I really don't consider it. Snort. Wang Shitong rolled her eyes at her in frustration and said, you will regret it later. After saying that, he turned back to the living room, turned on the TV to let it play casually, picked up his phone and found Chen Yuan's WeChat. The other side. In the rental house of Sunshine Apartment. Chen Yuan was eating in the kitchen when he heard a message on the phone in his pocket. He took it out and saw that it was from Wang Shitong. I was delighted and thought there was a chance. When I opened it, I saw. I was dumbfounded. Brother Chen Yuan, I'm sorry, my best friend is more stubborn than the donkey in the production team. She won't agree to anything no matter what. I really have no choice. Auntie has made you happy for nothing. Here is 1,000 yuan as compensation from Auntie. Below is the 1,000 yuan transferred by Wang Shitong. Well. Chen Yuan sighed helplessly as his wish was dashed, and said to himself, the old saying is still true, don't hold too high hopes for everything. Looking at the transferred 1,000 yuan, Chen Yuan instinctively wanted to take it. But just as he was about to point his finger down, he hesitated. Is it really okay to take someone's $1,000 for nothing like this? But now I am really short of money. After hesitating for a while, Chen Yuan's inner heart overcame reality. I quickly replied to Wang Shitong. Auntie, it's okay, I didn't do anything, I won't accept the money. The next second, Chen Yuan simply clicked, reject. On the sofa in the villa. Wang Shitong stared at the returned money, feeling a little confused. Wang Shitong, really didn't make a mistake about him. He is a good brother. It's a pity that some people don't know how to cherish. In the kitchen, Shen Yanning heard the noise from the living room and asked loudly, Shitong, what are you doing? Hearing this, Wang Shitong came to the kitchen unconvinced. Look. Wang Shitong was almost about to put the phone screen against Shen Yanning's face. The person I introduced to you didn't work out, so I gave him compensation, but he immediately returned it to me. For someone else, this money would be like free money, so don't miss it. But my brother didn't want it. Do you know what this is called? Shen Yanning asked, what's your name? Wang Shitong said emphatically, this is called character. Does the little chicken feather you met at the vegetable market have this kind of character? Upon hearing this, Shen Yanning was also dissatisfied. How come there is no more? I wanted to thank him, but he didn't tell me his name twice. Doesn't he have any character to do good deeds without leaving a name? Wang Shitong was stunned. Okay, I can't argue with you. I tell you, you will suffer a great loss sooner or later. If you are wronged or cheated, don't hide in my arms and cry anymore. I went back to the living room angrily. Brother, if you don't accept auntie's money, then if auntie invites you to dinner, you won't refuse, right? Wang Shitong held the phone and felt that talking to Chen Yuan at this moment was more pleasant than talking to Xinyaning. In an apartment rental, Chen Yuan ate noodles while typing a reply to Wang Shitong. Auntie, I appreciate your kindness, but I'm busy with work and can't spare the time. Sorry. Wang Shitong, have you found a job? Chen Yuan, no, the rent is about to expire, and the landlord wants to increase the rent, and it has to be paid every 6 months. I am not well off, so starting tomorrow, I have to find another part-time job. Wang Shitong, I don't know what to say to you, auntie. If you are short of money, you should spend your time looking for a job instead of spending your time taking another part-time job. Wang Shitong, what major did you study in college? I know a lot of people in Jiangsu, and I'll find you a good job. Chen Yuan, auntie, no thanks, I can do it myself. After replying the message, Chen Yuan took the bowl and went to the kitchen. Spring River Villa. Xinyaning brought the prepared food to the restaurant and called Wang Shitong to come and eat. What's wrong? Why are you looking so droopy? When Xinyaning was helping her serve the rice, she saw her lost look and asked casually. Nothing. Wang Shitong shook her head, as if she had made a decision in her heart. She suddenly came to her senses and said with a smile, let's eat. Sunshine apartment rental. Chen Yuan was washing pots and dishes in the kitchen, and Wang Shitong's words just now kept echoing in his mind. Working more part-time jobs is not a solution. In the current situation, finding a job should really be the top priority. Having a job doesn't mean you will be like a duckweed, drifting around in this big city all day long. After cleaning up the kitchen, Chen Yuan returned to his bedroom, turned on his computer, and prepared to find a few more companies to submit his resume. Just then, a text message suddenly came on the phone. Mr. Chen Yuan, congratulations on being qualified for an interview with our marketing department. Please bring relevant documents to our Human Resources Department at 9 a.m. tomorrow to wait for the interview. Human Resources Department of Jiangsu Qianlanlan Hygiene Products Company, Limited. After reading the text message, Chen Yuan blinked blankly. The sky is blue. Chen Yuan didn't expect that he would be qualified for an interview just by randomly submitting a resume the day before yesterday morning. He saw on the recruitment platform that the basic salary of this company's marketers was 2,000 higher than that of other companies, and the relevant commission ratio was also very high, so he thought that the requirements for screening resumes would also be very high. And the other party is a company that makes sanitary napkins. If they need marketers, they should choose from women. Men's resumes will definitely be eliminated first. I never expected that I would be qualified for the interview. Using men to market items meant for women. Chen Yuan frowned, feeling that the boss of this company was quite unconventional. Making sanitary napkins is also good. It can always protect women when they are in trouble. How great! Chen Yuan tried his best to convince himself. That night, Chen Yuan prepared his resume and other relevant materials for the interview. Then he rummaged through the drawers and found a cheap suit that looked decent. The next day, Spring River Villa. Xinyaning pushed away Wang Shitong's big white legs that were resting on her buttocks and got up with a sore back. Aha! Yangning, what time is it? Why are you getting up so early? Wang Shitong said in a daze. As Xinyaning was getting dressed, she said, I have to go to the company for a morning meeting, and then I have to go to Jingfeng building at 10 o'clock. Wang Shitong smacked her lips, closed her eyes and said in a daze, Jingfeng building. Why go there? Xinyaning put on her clothes and sat in front of the dressing table combing her hair. She said, there is a company called Qianlanlan that makes sanitary napkins. Their product standards are very strict. The quality of sanitary napkins on the market now varies greatly. I feel that they have great potential to rise. Now they are planning to quickly expand the market, and it is also a time to burn money. I have made an appointment with their CEO Zhao and plan to invest some money. Chapter 6 Long-legged female CEO. 8:30 in the morning. Chen Yuan appeared at Jingfeng building on time. Following the instructions of the building security, I took the elevator to the 26th floor and saw the sign of Qianlanlan Company. When the front desk learned that Chen Yuan was here for an interview, they took him directly to the door of the conference room next to the Human Resources Department. The interview starts at 9 o'clock. Please sit here first. The voice of the girl at the front desk was soft, like cotton, but clear. Okay, thank you. Chen Yuan nodded and looked around. There were 7 or 8 people there, probably all here for the interview. He was the only male among them. For a moment, Chen Yuan felt a little embarrassed. When the group of women saw Chen Yuan, they looked around in surprise, somewhat unable to believe it. Young man, what position are you applying for? Asked a long-legged woman in her early 30s with straight hair and silver-rimmed glasses. Chen Yuan looked at 7 or 8 pairs of eyes falling on him, and felt a chill in his heart. He forced a smile and said, interview for a marketing position. As soon as the words came out, the other women were stunned. A man marketing sanitary napkins. The long-legged girl with glasses narrowed her eyes, even more incredulous. Do you know anything about sanitary napkins? I don't know, but I bought them for my female classmates in college. They used short ones for daytime use and long ones for nighttime use. Because people tossed and turned in their sleep at night, they didn't need long ones because they would leak easily. The long-legged girl with glasses blushed, and the other women laughed so hard that they fell over. Chen Yuan's face was burning. Did I say something wrong? One of the women said repeatedly, that's right. Just then, 2 men in suits, each holding a folder, strode over. Mr. Zhao. When the 2 men saw the long-legged girl with glasses, they shouted in unison. The long-legged girl with glasses nodded slightly, raised her wrist to check the time. It was exactly 9 o'clock. It's interview time. The long-legged woman with glasses said, looking around at everyone around her and adjusting her glasses, let me introduce myself first. My name is Zhao Mingyu, the founder and CEO of Qianlanlan. The 2 people in front of you are Yang Li, the director of the Human Resources Department, and Cao Dang, the director of the Marketing Department. Hearing this, several women were surprised and nodded quickly. Hello, Mr. Zhao. Hello, Director Yang. Hello, Director Cao. Yang Li nodded slightly and said, the interview will start soon. Whoever's name is called will go in. Understood. Everyone nodded. Chen Yuan nodded in a daze and looked at Zhao Mingyu again. He used to see company bosses mixed in with the interview crowd in TV dramas and thought it was just a TV show, but it turns out it's like that in real life too. Fortunately, I didn't say anything nonsense just now. Chen Yuan took a breath of fear. In the conference room, Zhao Mingyu sat in the middle of the inner side of the conference table, while Yang Li and Cao Dang sat on her left and right. As soon as the 2 sat down, Zhao Mingyu couldn't help but ask, what's going on with you? Why was the interview notice for the marketing position sent to a man? Hearing this, the 2 of them were startled and recalled that there seemed to be a man standing by the door just now. The interview notice is submitted by the Marketing Department to the Human Resources Department, and finally sent out by the Human Resources Department. Although Cao Dang is the director of the Marketing Department, the Marketing Department manages several departments. The interview notice does not need to go through Cao Dang at all. However, the review before the interview notice is issued must be approved by Yang Li, the Human Resources Director. Boss Zhao, I thought their marketing department was going to do something creative, so I didn't ask anyone to confirm it. How about I go and tell that person that we made a mistake and ask him to go back? Zhao Mingyu frowned slightly. Forget it. Telling him now that we made a mistake is just making fun of him. Let's just keep him till the end and deal with him and let him go back. Okay, I'll listen to you. Yang Li nodded embarrassedly. Soon, the interview officially began. Chen Yuan was outside, watching the interviewees being called in one after another. Some came out with smiles on their faces, while others came out sighing. It was already the 5th one, but it was not my turn yet. I suddenly felt a little nervous. Then I saw that there was no one in front. Chen Yuan took a deep breath, exhaled slowly, and prepared to go in. Chen Yuan. There was a shout from inside the door. Here it comes. Chen Yuan responded, knocked on the door and went in. After the previous interview, Zhao Mingyu carefully read Chen Yuan's resume. When it comes to professional matching, Chen Yuan is really the right one. What I studied in college was advertising and marketing. After Chen Yuan entered the room, Cao Dang motioned for him to take a seat. Chen Yuan nodded in thanks and sat down opposite him. Zhao Mingyu looked up at Chen Yuan and got straight to the point. Student Chen Yuan, since you are interviewing for a marketing position, then tell me, what is advertising marketing? For someone who has studied the profession, this kind of question is like asking a cook what is the difference between salt and sugar. But Zhao Mingyu just wanted to hear what unique answer this student who graduated from advertising and marketing could give. If Chen Yuan's answers were just what was in the textbook, then she could just tell Chen Yuan to go back and wait for further notice. When Chen Yuan heard this question, he thought to himself that using such a simple question to test himself must be because the person wanted to hear his own unique opinion. In this case, I have to explain it in detail. Strive for a job opportunity. Mr. Zhao, advertising is advertising, and marketing is marketing. I don't think the two can be confused. Zhao Mingyue's eyes flickered. She had heard this view before, but she still pretended to be puzzled and asked, "Can you elaborate on it?" "Of course." Chen Yuan nodded and said excitedly, "In my eyes, the so-called advertising is to spread the news widely and let everyone know that there is such a brand, such a product, and such a thing in the world. Whether consumers recognize the brand or buy the product is not entirely within the responsibility of advertising. Marketing is different." Zhao Mingyu asked, "Why is it different?" Chen Yuan went on to say, "Marketing is divided into many types, but in my opinion, none of them is more direct and easier to achieve results than event marketing." Zhao Mingyu said, "You want to use a certain event to make people ask questions and discuss about the brand and products, so as to generate a desire to buy." Chen Yuan nodded, "Mr. Zhao, you are right. If our product is good, I believe it will have a very good positive effect." As the marketing director, Cao Dang interrupted and said, "But if it is not handled properly, it may have a very negative impact on the brand. Can you be responsible for the consequences?" Chen Yuan smiled calmly, "This will test the ability of the person at the helm." Cao Dang said, "You may think you have the ability to steer the ship, but you don't have the ability to take responsibility. If something goes wrong, the company will have to deal with it. For the company, the risk is too great." Chen Yuan was stunned when he heard this, and subconsciously responded, "Why start a company if you are afraid of risks?" I regretted the moment I said it. Although it's true, this is an interview. Sure enough, when Cao Dang heard this, his face immediately turned dark. If the boss wasn't sitting next to him, he would have kicked Chen Yuan out right now. At this moment, Zhao Mingyu and Yang Li's expressions were not much better. Especially Zhao Mingyu. Chen Yuan glanced at her and felt that she was gritting her teeth. Zhao Mingyu stared at Chen Yuan angrily. "Student Chen Yuan, if I ask you to plan an event marketing, what plan can you come up with?" Chen Yuan thought about what he had just said, and he knew that he definitely had no chance of getting the job, so he simply said, "If you want a specific plan, either you hire me, or we negotiate the price first." Chapter 7 Aunt is sad. Zhao Mingyu laughed angrily, "You are forcing us to hire you." Then he looked around and asked, "What do the two directors think?" Cao Dang said, "Mr. Zhao, I suggest that this person be kicked out." Yang Li didn't say anything, but nodded in agreement. Seeing that Cao Dang had said this, Chen Yuan felt that there was no need for him to wait for him to chase him away, so he just stood up and left. Zhao Mingyu said nothing, but lowered her eyes to look at Chen Yuan's resume, her face slightly solemn. After a while, just as Chen Yuan opened the door to leave, she looked up and said, "Student Chen Yuan, congratulations, you're hired." "Well." Chen Yuan was stunned for a moment, then turned around and asked, "Boss Zhao, do you want to hire me?" Cao Dan was anxious, "Boss Zhao, why would you hire someone like this?" Zhao Mingyu raised her hand, signaling him to stop talking, and said to Chen Yuan, "If you are willing to join our company, Director Cao will personally take you to complete the entry procedures, but..." Zhao Mingyu turned around and said, "Your so-called marketing plan must be delivered to my office by hand before noon tomorrow, and there must be 3 of them. This will be considered as an assessment during the probation period. Is that okay with you?" "All right." Chen Yuan nodded readily. There are still at least 24 hours until tomorrow noon, so the workload of the 3 plans is not a problem for him at all. However, he also asked Zhao Mingyu, "Boss Zhao, if the plan is implemented and there is a good response, how much bonus can the company give me?" Yang Li had been silent just now, but after hearing this, he couldn't help but tease, "I say, kid, you're already thinking about the bonus before you even know where the plan is. You have a long-term vision." Chen Yuan looked proud. "Of course, if you don't even consider this, how can you be the helmsman of the plan?" Yang Li felt that his words had successfully helped Chen Yuan to show off. Zhao Mingyu glanced at Yang Li speechlessly, signaling him to stop talking, otherwise this kid would be in the air in the next second, and then answered Chen Yuan's question seriously. Generally speaking, it ranges from 10,000 to 30,000. If the response is good enough, 50,000 is not impossible. Hearing this, Chen Yuan instantly felt that there was something going on, and replied heavily, "Sure, I can start working now." "Good." Zhao Mingyu nodded slightly and looked at the time. It was 8 minutes to 10. She said to Cao Dang, "I'm going to meet an investor later. This guy, Chen Yuan, is in your hands." After saying that, Zhao Mingyu stood up, glanced at Chen Yuan, and left in a hurry. Yang Li stood up and patted Cao Dang on the shoulder, as if to tell him to take care of himself, and left. Cao Dang rolled his eyes at Chen Yuan in frustration, put away the documents on the table, and said, "Follow me." Chen Yuan secretly chewed his teeth, feeling that he had offended Cao Dang. He is the director of marketing, and the marketing department is under the marketing department. Won't people under his command suffer from now on? Well, Director Cao. When you live under someone's roof, you have to bow your head. Chen Yuan quickly caught up with Cao Dang. "Director Cao, I apologize for offending you just now. It was an unintentional mistake. Please don't mind it." Cao Dang snorted coldly, "There are so many people who have offended me, and you are not the only one." Chen Yuan. The Human Resources Department is next to the conference room. Chen Yuan brought all the necessary information and completed the entry procedures quickly. Immediately afterwards, Cao Dang took him to the marketing department. "Manager Hong!" Cao Dang shouted. Then, a woman in her 20s, wearing tight jeans and with some dark bags under her eyes, stood up and walked over. "Director Cao, what's the matter?" Cao Dang glanced at Chen Yuan and said, "This is your new colleague in the marketing department, his name is Chen Yuan." "Well." Manager Hong was stunned. "Director Cao, our marketing department is short of people, but you can't give us a man." "I don't want a man." "Cao Dang, what do you mean you don't want a man? Didn't you hand the interview notice to the Human Resources Department before they sent it out?" Manager Hong was surprised. "I want a man." Cao Dang realized that it was Supervisor Hong who made a mistake, but the matter was done and there was nothing more to say. "You should stay up less all night in the future. You are so young but your eyesight is blurry. Mr. Zhao has already hired him. You have to keep this man whether you want him or not." As he spoke, he suddenly remembered, "Oh, by the way, you arrange a workstation for him so that he can get familiar with the environment. Don't assign him any work before noon tomorrow." Manager Hong was unhappy when he heard this. "How can that be possible? We have so many things to do right now." Cao Dang frowned, "Listen to me or you." Manager Hong, "Of course I will listen to you." "Then do as I say." After saying that, Cao Dang turned and left. After Cao Dang walked away, Manager Hong looked at Chen Yuan for a long time and asked, "Do you know about sanitary napkins?" Chen Yuan's inner thoughts, "Is this the end? Oh, well, it's not too late to find out later." Manager Hong shook his head, obviously disappointed. "Forget it, just learn slowly, you come with me first." As he spoke, Manager Hong came to an empty workstation and said, "This will be your position from now on. The company and product information are all on the desk. Look for them yourself and familiarize yourself with them first." Chen Yuan nodded, "Okay, thank you, Director Hong." The other side. CEO's office. Zhao Mingyu and Shen Yanging had a very pleasant chat, and even felt that they had met too late. The 20 million yuan financing was successfully achieved, and all that was left was to choose a date to sign the contract. "Mr. Shen, it's a rare visit for you. I'll show you around the company first, and then take you to the factory in the afternoon." Shen Yanning stood up and nodded, "Okay, then I'll have to trouble Mr. Zhao." So, two extremely beautiful women, each with their own unique qualities, started working in the company. After visiting several departments, the two came to the marketing department. "Mr. Shen, in addition to the channel department, our important department is also the marketing department. As you know, these days, even good wine needs to be promoted in a remote alley. We need to keep up with the products and channels, and of course, marketing cannot be left behind." Shen Yang stared at the employees working in front of him, nodded and said, "Mr. Zhao has considered everything. I believe that Qian Lanlan will definitely have a place in the market in the future." "Thank you, Mr. Shen, for the compliment." Zhao Mingyu walked and nodded with a smile, and just came to Manager Hong. Manager Hong saw someone standing next to him, turned around and realized it was Zhao Mingyu, and quickly stood up. Boss Zhao, I didn't know you were here. Fine. Zhao Mingyu smiled and said, Manager Hong, this is our company's investor, Mr. Shen from Xinchen Capital. Hong Lu quickly called out, Hello, Mr. Shen. Zhao Mingyu then said to Shen Yanning, Boss Shen, this is our marketing director, Hong Lu. Shen Yanning seemed to have seen something. She responded absent-mindedly and immediately walked in the direction where his eyes were fixed. Zhao Mingyu's face changed slightly, and she hurriedly followed. Boss Shen, what's wrong? Shen Yanning came to a workstation and looked at the person squatting on the ground. She suddenly felt hurt. Zhao Mingyu didn't understand, so she lowered her head and asked, Chen Yuan, what are you doing squatting on the ground? Chen Yuan stood up awkwardly and said with a silly smile, Har har, Mr. Zhao, I'm picking up a pen. Chapter 8. Want to see a joke? Shen Yanning didn't believe this lame excuse. She was very sure that Chen Yuan was trying to avoid her just now. She couldn't figure out what had happened to him. Mr. Zhao, is he also working part-time here? Shen Yanning asked puzzledly. Zhao Mingyu shook her head. No, he was just hired today. It's a long story. Mr. Shen, do you know him? Shen Yanning didn't say anything. Chen Yuan's avoidance just now really hurt her feelings. She turned around and said to Zhao Mingyu, Boss Zhao, I'm sorry. I suddenly remembered that I have something else to do. I won't go to the factory this afternoon. Let's make an appointment some other day when we have time. After saying that, Shen Yanning strode away. Zhao Mingyu was confused, and it took her a long time to come back to her senses. She stared at Chen Yuan with a strange look in her eyes. Come to my office. Oh. Chen Yuan pouted uncomfortably, then followed Zhao Mingyu amid the strange looks from his colleagues in the department. Manager Hong, our new colleague seems to be a little special. A colleague came up to Hong Lu and whispered. Hong Lu was also curious, but looking at the work at hand, she immediately said to everyone, all right, stop guessing, and adjust the plan carefully. Chen Yuan followed behind Zhao Mingyu, looking at her perky buttocks and beautiful legs along the way, and smelling the fragrant breeze all the way to the office. Zhao Mingyu walked to the back of the desk and sat down, motioning Chen Yuan not to stand either. Chen Yuan bowed and sat down opposite. Chen Yuan, don't tell me you don't know Mr. Shen. Zhao Mingyu went straight to the point. It has always been her style to not waste words. Chen Yuan fan, well, I know him, but... Zhao Mingyu interrupted domineeringly, I don't care what happened between you or what your relationship is. President Chen promised an investment of 20 million. This 20 million is related to our future development. She is very angry because of you now. Whether to invest this 20 million has become a problem. The responsibility lies entirely with you. Zhao Mingyu stared at Chen Yuan. Chen Yuan said depressedly, this is really a pot of shit falling from the sky, it hits everyone exactly. Zhao Mingyu waved her hand, don't say it's useless. I'm going to give you a task now. Within 3 days, you have to make her happy for me. If you do it, I'll give you a bonus of 5,000 yuan right away. Chen Yuan frowned, what if I don't coax her? Zhao Mingyu said coldly, then you can go and complete the resignation procedures now. Chen Yuan's expression froze, feeling that this woman didn't seem to be joking. It was hard to get this job, and the salary is good. It would be a bit difficult to find such a good one again. As the saying goes, a real man can bend and stretch. It's all about work. What's more, if you can coax her well, you can get a bonus of 5,000 yuan directly. This way you can throw the money in the landlord's face and tell him to stop talking. But the problem now is that he has no idea why Shen Yanning is angry. Besides, does he have the ability to appease a capital tycoon who holds hundreds of billions of assets? Boss Zhao, what if I can't coax her? Zhao Mingyu said, go ahead and complete the resignation procedures. Chen Yuan, well, okay, after I hand over the plan to you tomorrow, I will go to see Mr. Shen. Hearing this, Zhao Mingyu nodded in satisfaction and gently waved her jade fingers, go. After returning to his workstation, Chen Yuan discovered that his colleagues around him would occasionally look up at him, and a female colleague next to him even stole glances at him. Is there something unclean on me? Chen Yuan asked his colleague. The colleague shook her head, paused for a moment, but couldn't help leaning over and asking quietly, Chen Yuan, what happened just now? Nothing's wrong. Mr. Zhao just told me to be more steady at work and not to shake my hands. All right. My colleague lost interest instantly. Chen Yuan then withdrew his thoughts and searched for a few files on his computer desktop to familiarize himself with the company and product information. The other side. Chen Yanning returned to the company and sat in the office for a long time but still couldn't figure out why Chen Yuan was avoiding her. Boss Shen, are you feeling unwell? Would you like to ask the driver to take you home to rest? Secretary Huang Li made her a cup of coffee, handed it to her, and asked in a low voice. Chen Yanning shook her head, picked up the coffee and took a sip, then put the cup down and asked, Secretary Huang, I want to ask a question. Huang Li was slightly stunned. Mr. Shen, please ask. Chen Yanning pondered and said, what if, you just met someone, and you think he's a pretty good person, and you want to be friends with him, but he doesn't seem to be happy about it, and even avoids you when he sees you, why is that? Huang Li didn't know why Chen Yanning suddenly asked such a question. After thinking for a while, she said, maybe he doesn't want to be friends with me. If that's the case, there's no need for me to be friends with him. Oh, I see. Chen Yanning nodded. Although this answer was not what she wanted to hear, it was indeed the fact. Thank you, Secretary Huang. Go back to your work. Chen Yanning smiled slightly, picked up the document at hand and started reading. Chen Yuan spent the whole afternoon reading documents. When it was almost time to get off work, Cao Dang came over. Seeing Chen Yuan holding his chin with a worried look on his face, he sneered to himself. Chen Yuan, what are you worrying about? How much have you written about the 3 plans? Chen Yuan didn't stand up either, and replied lazily, it hasn't started yet. Oh. Cao Dang curled his lips proudly, then you better hurry up. Even if you don't sleep tonight, you only have a dozen hours. If you don't come up with an eye-catching plan, your workstation will soon become someone else's. As he said this, he patted Chen Yuan's shoulder seriously. Chen Yuan knew that Cao Dang was waiting to see a joke, so he said with a chuckle, Director Cao, please don't worry about the plan. That's good. Cao Dang said it calmly, but he was secretly gritting his teeth in his heart. Let's see how long you can be so proud. Return to the rental house after get off work. Chen Yuan cooked himself a bowl of instant noodles, added an egg and 2 pieces of ham, temporarily put aside the matter of coaxing Chen Yanning, and concentrated on writing the plan. After writing 3 plans and carefully considering them, it was already 1 o'clock in the morning. Chen Yuan suddenly remembered that Zhao Mingyu said that the plan should be sent to her office before tomorrow noon, but didn't say anything else. I simply cancelled the alarm clock at 7 o'clock in the morning. I slept until 10 in the morning. Sky Blue Company. Cao Dang was feeling a little bored sitting in the office. It was almost 10:30, and he suddenly wanted to see Chen Yuan make a fool of himself. So I went to the marketing department, but there was no sign of Chen Yuan. Manager Hong, where is Chen Yuan? Hong Lu probably stayed up all night again, and the bags under her eyes were heavier than yesterday. She replied, I don't know. I didn't see him in the morning. Cao Dang frowned, but soon a smile appeared on his lips. He retreated in the face of difficulty. It seems that he has some self-awareness. He knows that he is not cut out for this, so he just hides his head like a turtle. Just then, a loud sound was heard. Director Cao, are you ready to see a joke so soon? Isn't it a bit early? Chapter 9. The CEO is very satisfied. Cao Dang's face darkened. The company starts work at 8:30, but you come at 10:30. Do you have any sense of propriety? Chen Yuan smiled calmly. The plan has been written. If Mr. Zhao does not adopt it, I will go to resign. It doesn't matter whether I am late or not. On the contrary, if Mr. Zhao accepts it, being 2 hours late will be even less important. Chen Yuan, how do you talk to your boss? Hong Lu frowned and scolded. After all, you are new to the workplace. You dare to offend anyone. Aren't you afraid of being bullied in the future? Seeing his boss speaking, Chen Yuan said nothing more. He took out 3 documents from his bag, turned around and walked towards Zhao Mingyue's office. Cao Dang was left aside and opened his mouth speechlessly. Hong Lu glanced at Chen Yuan's back and said to Cao Dang, Director Cao, this young man who just graduated doesn't know the rules. Don't bother with him. Cao Dang said angrily, if he can't stay today, it's fine. But if he does, as the supervisor, you must keep him in good order, otherwise you can quit your job. Hong Lu knew that he was venting his anger on her, so she nodded and said, I understand, Director Cao, I will take good care of him. Cao Dang snorted and said nothing more. The other side. Chen Yuan knocked on the door and walked into Zhao Mingyue's office. Zhao Mingyue's red lips are particularly beautiful. Mr. Zhao, the plan is ready. Please take a look. Having said that, Chen Yuan placed the plan next to her. Zhao Mingyu lowered her head, read the document in her hand, signed it, put it aside, looked up at Chen Yuan, pressed her jade finger, motioned him to sit down, and said, I heard that you didn't write a single word before you got off work yesterday, and now the plan is here. Did you stay up late last night? Mr. Zhao is wise. Chen Yuan nodded with a smile, I stayed up until the early morning and took a nap. I am 2 hours late and just arrived at the company. Please forgive me, Mr. Zhao. I thought, how did Zhao Mingyu know that I didn't write a single word yesterday? It must be Cao Dang who secretly reported it. Zhao Mingyu said indifferently, as long as the proposal is well written, it doesn't matter if you are late every day. Chen Yuan said, it has to be Mr. Zhao. Unlike some directors, who sit in senior positions in the company and don't think about how to expand the company, they just try to make a presence at the grassroots level. Zhao Mingyu shook her head and smiled, all right, stop playing tricks on him. I admit that Cao Dang came to me to complain. As he spoke, Zhao Mingyu picked up Chen Yuan's plan and began to read it. Chen Yuan sat opposite without disturbing her, just looking at Zhao Mingyu quietly. I don't know whether she is married or not. As Chen Yuan looked at Zhao Mingyu, he muttered to himself. Not everyone can handle such a beautiful, domineering lady, right? It would be a pity if no one controlled it and it was left idle. Chen Yuan hated himself for being a small-time scum who couldn't even pay the rent. If I had any money, I would get Zhao Mingyu in my hands no matter what. Have you seen enough? Just when Chen Yuan was secretly salivating, Zhao Mingyu suddenly raised her eyes. Chen Yuan panicked and felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. Boss Zhao, I'd better go out and wait. Having said that, Chen Yuan was about to get up and leave. No. Zhao Mingyu closed the plan in her hand and asked curiously, Chen Yuan, I've read your resume. It's very clean. It seems that you didn't plan anything during your college years, right? But the 3 plans you submitted now are, to be honest, very mature and highly feasible. Can you explain them a little bit? When Chen Yuan finished writing these 3 plans, he had anticipated that Zhao Mingyu would have such questions, and he did not intend to hide it. Mr. Zhao, my resume is indeed a little clean, but that's not the case. During college, I led the marketing planning of several brands and it was very successful. Those brands are now household names, but because my counselor is a marketing consultant for those companies, mine became his. Zhao Mingyu nodded silently, then your counselor shouldn't have treated you unfairly, right? Chen Yuan smiled and said, he really didn't treat me badly. He praised me behind my back for a long time and said that I would definitely have a bright future. Hearing this, Zhao Mingyu couldn't help but smiled and said, and you just admitted it. Chen Yuan said helplessly, there is no other way. The diploma is in their hands. I have no choice but to accept it. I understand. Zhao Mingyu nodded and got back to the point, all 3 of your plans are good. I've decided to adopt all of them. Real. Chen Yuan couldn't help but feel happy, thank you, Mr. Zhao, for your appreciation. I will definitely work like a slave for you in the future. Zhao Mingyu smiled gently, then picked up the phone on the table and asked Honglu to come over. After a while, Honglu knocked on the door and came in. Mr. Zhao, you're looking for me. Honglu had dark circles under her eyes and was very respectful. Zhao Mingyu nodded slightly and asked, how are your plans going? Honglu said, everything is ready. Zhao Mingyu picked up Chen Yuan's plan and handed it over, take a look at these 3 plans. Yes. Honglu took it in her hand, opened it and looked at it, and was gradually shocked. Zhao Mingyu saw that she had almost finished reading it and asked, how does it compare to the plan you have? Honglu lowered her head in shame, feeling that she had wasted 2 or 3 nights. Don't lower your head, speak. Zhao Mingyu frowned. Honglu swallowed her saliva and said, Boss Zhao, these 3 plans are much better than the ones I have. Zhao Mingyu said, in this case, put aside the plan you have for the time being and work on these 3 plans. If you are unsure about anything, discuss it with Chen Yuan first. Yes. Honglu replied, glancing sideways at Chen Yuan, a little incredulous. As soon as I joined the company, I was valued by the boss. Will I be able to rise to prominence in the future? Manager Hong, please go and get busy first. Zhao Mingyu waved her hand. Yes. Hong Lu came to her senses and left with the plan. Chen Yuan Jian saw that there seemed to be nothing to do, so he said, Boss Zhao, I'll get busy now. Zhao Mingyu nodded, and suddenly remembered, wait a minute. Chen Yuan almost reached the door, but turned back and said, Boss Zhao, is there anything else? Zhao Mingyu subconsciously tightened her collar and said, Director Hong will be in charge of the implementation of the plan, so there won't be any problems. You can go find Mr. Shen now. When this matter was mentioned, Chen Yuan felt a little troubled. Why, you don't want to go? Zhao Mingyu frowned, if you don't want to go, I'll give you 20,000 yuan now. Even if I buy out your 3 plans, you go to the Human Resources Department to resign now. No, Mr. Zhao, can't I go? Chen Yuan immediately gave in. I've been sending out resumes for half a year and finally found a satisfying job with a beautiful boss. I really don't want to give it up like this. Zhao Mingyu's lips curled up slightly, and she said with a smug look on her face, why don't you hurry up and go? Chen Yuan, yes, I'll go right away. After the office door was closed, Zhao Mingyu chuckled, looked down at her chest, cursed inwardly, little pervert, and then buttoned up the top button of her shirt. The next second she stopped smiling and picked up the phone on the table. Chapter 10, Telling Your True Hearts to Each Other. Cao Dang was standing at the other end of the corridor. He saw Chen Yuan coming out of Zhao Mingyu's office, looking dejected. He did not go to the marketing department, but instead walked out of the company. He was very happy. After all, let's go. You thought you were safe just because Mr. Zhao decided to keep you here temporarily. Cao Dang shook his head proudly. Director Cao, the phone in your office is ringing. A colleague passing by reminded. When Cao Dang heard this, he hurried back to the office. Hello, Mr. Zhao, oh, okay, I'll be there now. After hanging up the phone, Cao Dang strode to Zhao Mingyu's office. Boss Zhao, Chen Yuan was so arrogant yesterday, and you had to give him a chance, but it's better for him to leave now. Zhao Mingyu frowned. Director Cao, what are you talking about? The proposal submitted by Chen Yuan is very good, I have adopted it, and he will officially be a member of our company from now on. Besides, I called you here to remind you not to talk about your colleagues behind their backs. Especially as a senior executive in the company, it would be even more unpleasant if you say bad things about your colleagues behind their backs. Cao Dang. Zhao Mingyu rolled her eyes at him secretly and changed the subject. By the way, have all the anchors for the e-commerce department been recruited? Cao Dang said, don't worry, Mr. Zhao, 6 platforms, 12 anchors, 12 hours of non-stop live broadcast. Zhao Mingyu nodded, unsure of how effective Chen Yuan's plan would be. Okay, let's do this for now. The other side. Chen Yuan took a taxi and arrived at the entrance of Xingchen Building. I don't know if it was because the temperature suddenly dropped on their way here, or if Xinyaning was still angry, but Chen Yuan just felt a chill. When he arrived at the gate booth, Chen Yuan stated his purpose and even showed his work ID to the other party. The security guard asked him to wait and called upstairs. On the top floor of the building, Xinyaning had clearly decided to forget about Chen Yuan, but for some reason, the image of Chen Yuan upholding justice in the vegetable market kept appearing in her mind from time to time. Like a frozen light that can't be dispelled. At this time, Secretary Huang Li pushed the door open and came in. Mr. Shen, the security guard downstairs called and said that someone named Chen Yuan from Qianlanlan Company came to visit you. It should be about financing, but I haven't heard of anyone named Chen Yuan from Qianlanlan. When Xinyaning heard Chen Yuan's name, her heart trembled. Not see. Xinyaning refused outright. At the entrance of the building, Chen Yuan waited anxiously for a while, and then the phone in the booth rang. The security guard picked up the phone. Yeah, okay, I get it. After hanging up the phone, the security guard said to Chen Yuan, Mr. Chen, I'm sorry, our Mr. Shen is out. Chen Yuan couldn't help but smile bitterly. How could the security guard not know where Xinyaning was going out? If he was really not there, the security guard wouldn't have to call for instructions. It seems she is really angry. Chen Yuan muttered to himself and prepared to go back to the company to think of a solution. I came to the side of the road and hailed a taxi. Just as he was about to open the car door, the security guard chased after him. "Mr. Chen, wait a moment. Mr. Shen, please come up." Chen Yuan was delighted and said to the taxi driver, "Excuse me, sir." After arriving inside the building, follow the guidance of the front desk staff on the first floor and take the elevator directly to the top floor. "Mr. Chen, this way please." Chen Yuan nodded and followed. Soon they arrived at the door of a double-door office. Secretary Huang was standing at the door. Secretary Huang saw Chen Yuan and asked, "Are you from Tianlanlan Company?" "Yes, my name is Chen Yuan." "PLZ, follow me," Secretary Huang said as he pushed open the office door. "Mr. Shen, Mr. Chen is here." Shen Yanning glanced at Chen Yuan coldly and asked Secretary Huang to go down first. "Don't you like to avoid me? Why are you here again now?" Chen Yuan knew that she was still angry, and he felt indescribable pain in his heart. "Boss Shen, I'm sorry, it's my fault, Okay, sit down. I don't want to hear you say this." Shen Yanning interrupted him. Not wanting to blame him, she stood up and asked, "Tea or coffee?" Chen Yuan sat down on the sofa nearby. As soon as his buttocks sat down, he felt like he had fallen into a deep pit. "Coffee, coffee." Shen Yanning was amused by his funny appearance and laughed secretly. Chen Yuan looked at the huge office and felt very uncomfortable. Fortunately, Shen Yanning brought the coffee after a while. "Thank you, Mr. Shen." Chen Yuan got up to answer it, but found that the sofa was too soft and it was difficult for him to get up. "Okay, don't be restrained here with me." Shen Yanning gave him a resentful look. Chen Yuan was panicked. He picked up the coffee and took a sip, which eased the embarrassment a little. Shen Yanning came to sit at the top, crossed her legs and asked, "Did Zhao Mingyu ask you to come?" "Yes." Chen Yuan nodded honestly. "She said that you were angry yesterday because of me, and the company is still waiting for your investment. She said that if I can get your forgiveness in 3 days, she will let me pack up and leave." Shen Yanning looked at him and said, "So you came to me just to keep your job?" "Well, not entirely." Chen Yuan didn't dare to look directly at Shen Yanning, and could only focus his eyes on the tip of her shoes. "It's my honor to be recognized by you. I really shouldn't have avoided you and offended you. After you left, I regretted it, but I didn't have the face to apologize to you." Shen Yanning nodded slightly. "Then tell me, why did you hide from me at that time? What were you thinking?" Chen Yuan adjusted his breathing secretly and said, "I didn't know your identity before. It was only after you went to buy milk tea that day that my colleague told me your identity. You are a capital tycoon with hundreds of billions of assets, and I am just a speck of dust in the vast sea of people. As the saying goes, there is a world of difference. I'm afraid that if I get to know you too much, I'll forget who I am, so I want to stay away from you and be myself." Shen Yanning was surprised when she heard this. "Are you speaking from the heart?" Chen Yuan nodded. "It's the truth." Shen Yanning responded, "Since you are telling me the truth, I will tell you the truth too. You must think that I am a rich man and an investor. I meet a lot of people every day and I have a lot of friends. In fact, it is quite the opposite. I only have 1 or 2 friends who can tell the truth to me. It's just the 2 of us here. I won't hide it from you. That day at the market, I was immediately attracted by your righteousness. I thought I could make another friend, but you." Shen Yanning couldn't help but feel disappointed. Chen Yuan lowered his head in shame. "Boss Shen, I'm sorry, I let you down." Shen Yanning asked, "Are you willing to treat me, an old aunt, as your friend now?" Chen Yuan smiled bitterly and looked up at Shen Yanning. "Mr. Shen is in the prime of his life. It would be fine as long as you don't despise me for being a poor boy." Shen Yanning cleared the clouds and showed a long-lost smile. "Of course I don't mind. Among the people I know, there are few who are richer than me." Chen Yuan smiled helplessly. "Boss Shen, are you not angry anymore?" Shen Yanning put down her crossed legs and said angrily, "It's been a long time, why am I still angry? By the way, I kept asking you what your name was before, but you just refused to tell me. Now I'll ask you again, what's your name?" Chapter 11. Auntie wants to fall in love. "Don't you already know my name is Chen Yuan?" Chen Yuan blushed a little. Shen Yanning said, "No, but I want you to tell me in person." Chen Yuan couldn't help but smile secretly. Why did he still have a childish temper? "Okay, my name is Chen Yuan." "Hello Chen Yuan, my name is Shen Yanning." Chen Yuan nodded. "Okay, Mr. Shen, I'll remember that. Then you will still invest in the investment that you agreed to with our Mr. Zhao yesterday, right? Chen Yaning said, of course, let's put it this way. Chen Yuan breathed a sigh of relief. Then I can go back and report back without any worries. Thank you, Mr. Shen. I'll leave first. Good. Shen Yaning nodded with a smile. On the side of the road in front of the Xingchen building, Chen Yuan happily hailed a taxi back to the company. As soon as the taxi left, a red Mercedes drove into the Xingchen building. Wang Shitong, wearing a beige woolen coat, holding a handbag and wearing high heels, got out of the car and walked into the building with powerful steps. After a while, Wang Shitong took the elevator to the top floor. I just happened to see Secretary Huang. Secretary Huang, is Mr. Shen in the office? Wang Shitong is an old acquaintance of Star Capital and is familiar to many employees. Secretary Huang said, I'm here. I just sent a guest away. New. Wang Shitong smiled and nodded, that's right. As she spoke, Wang Shitong took out a new lipstick from her handbag. This was given to me by a customer in my store yesterday. The color is a little light and it doesn't suit me, so I'm giving it to you. Secretary Huang took it in his hand and looked at it. His jaw dropped in shock. Boss Wang, this is a new limited edition from Dior. It costs more than 3,000 yuan per piece. You can't buy it even if you queue up. This is too expensive. Secretary Huang was flattered and quickly handed it to Wang Shitong. Wang Shitong pulled her hand and slapped it back. Why are you being so polite to me? Just take it. Secretary Huang was overjoyed. Thank you, Mr. Wang. Go ahead. Wang Shitong waved her hand, walked to the door of Shen Yaning's office, and pushed it open. Shitong, why are you here? Shen Yaning was stunned for a moment. She didn't expect Wang Shitong to come over at this time. Is it okay if I don't come? Wang Shitong came to Shen Yaning's office and sat down casually as if she had returned to her own home. Shen Yaning didn't quite understand what she heard, so she poured her another cup of coffee that she had just made for Chen Yuan. What's wrong? Why are you so worried? Is it related to me? Wang Shitong took a sip, put the cup on the coffee table, and said, of course it has something to do with you. Secretary Huang told me that you have been depressed since you came back from Jingfeng building yesterday. You didn't look very good, and you refused to tell me. Were you sick yesterday? Did you go to the hospital? If not, I will take you there now. Shen Yaning glanced at the door and said, Secretary Huang is really something. He tells everything to others. Wang Shitong asked, what do you mean by tell others? So you, Shen Yaning, have always treated me as an outsider. Oh, that's not what I meant. Shen Yaning explained, I'm fine, nothing happened. Look, I'm very happy, aren't I? As she spoke, Shen Yaning lifted up her skirt and turned around in front of Wang Shitong, with a smile on her face that she couldn't suppress. Wang Shitong looked at her and it didn't seem like anything was wrong, but she still didn't understand. Then why were you so depressed yesterday? Did you have an unpleasant conversation with the founder of that company? Shen Yaning shook her head, that's not the case. Wang Shitong asked, so what happened to you yesterday? Shen Yaning felt happy just thinking about it. She came to sit next to Wang Shitong and asked mysteriously, do you really want to know? Wang Shitong rolled her eyes speechlessly, if you don't tell me, I'll leave first. Hey, I'm here now. Shen Yaning pulled her to sit down, you just want to know what's going on. I'll tell you, we're friends. As he said this, he put his arm around Wang Shitong. Wang Shitong snorted, okay, go ahead. Shen Yaning's eyebrows curved, do you still remember the little brother I told you about? Wang Shitong frowned in disgust, that little chicken from the vegetable market. Shen Yaning asked, can you be more civilized and stop calling me a little chicken? Wang Shitong glared and said stubbornly, I don't care, I'm going to call him Little Chicken Feather. Shen Yaning couldn't resist and compromised, okay, little chicken feathers are little chicken feathers, you can call me whatever you want. After a pause, Shen Yaning continued, yesterday when I was at Jingfeng building, I ran into him again. He works at Tianlanlan Company. How can such a coincidence happen in the world? Wang Shitong said, yes, how could there be such a coincidence in the world? It must be intentional. He just wants to hook up with an aunt like you who is rich, beautiful, and in need of love. Shen Yaning was dissatisfied, he's not a god, how did he know I was going to Tianlanlan yesterday? And what a coincidence, he was just hired by Tianlanlan. Wang Shitong was unable to refute for a moment and asked, then what? Chen Yanning took a deep breath and continued, Boss Zhao took me around the company. When we got to the marketing department, I saw him and he saw me, but his first reaction was to avoid me. Wang Shitong murmured and nodded, so you are unhappy about this? Chen Yanning said seriously, yes, just because of this. Why do you think he should avoid me? I'm not a man-eating tigress. Wang Shitong shook her head slightly and sighed, Yang Ning, you have seen a lot of things, but you can actually be affected by a little chicken feather and so on. Wang Shitong was suddenly stunned. She sat up straight and stared at Chen Yanning. Yanning, you don't have any thoughts about him, do you? Chen Yanning blushed subconsciously and said, do you remember how you advised me a few days ago? I thought about it last night and I think you are absolutely right. I can't live alone for the rest of my life, and I can't just find someone to live with. I have to taste the sweetness of love before I get old, otherwise my life will be wasted. Wang Shitong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She didn't expect that the boomerang she threw would hit her on the forehead. So you just picked a random chicken feather? Chen Yanning said, what do you mean by casual? I have met him several times. The one you introduced to me is what we call casual. Let me ask you, your little brother in the park, is he someone you fell in love with at first sight? Have you ever been in depth with him? I didn't go into it in depth. Do you know who he is? How many times have you met in the past few days? You don't even know how much he weighs, and you dare to introduce him to me. Are you not afraid of misleading me? Chen Yanning burst into laughter. Wang Shitong was speechless for a moment. She opened her mouth and finally said, I, Wang Shitong, would never make a mistake even if I only take one look at him. Chen Yanning raised her eyebrows, are you doubting my ability to judge people? Wang Shitong pursed her lips, so you really plan to date that little chicken? Chen Yanning thought about it carefully and lowered her eyes unconsciously, I really plan to do it, but I'm a little worried. Chapter 12 Aunt Tong has an appointment. Worry. Wang Shitong asked doubtfully, what is there to worry about? Chen Yanning became serious, think about it, how old am I and how old is he? Would he be willing to date an old aunt like me? I want to tell him that I like him. Will he think I'm a pervert? Okay, let's take a step back. Even if he doesn't care about these things and is really willing to date me, you know I can't keep him at home. I have a lot of social events, and sometimes I have to bring him along. How will those people view him then? They say he is a gigolo, hanging around rich women, living off women, spineless, and a disgrace to men. Although he is young, he is a serious and upright man. How can he be belittled like this? Where is his reputation? Where is his dignity? Hearing this, Wang Shitong couldn't help but sneer, you're already thinking so much about him before the relationship even begins. If you really want to fall in love, wouldn't you even offer your family fortune to him right away? By the way, what if he's here just to eat gigolo? Wang Shitong said, and suddenly an idea came to her mind, how about this? I won't stop you from liking little chicken feathers, but we have to do it on two fronts. Don't give up on the little brother I introduced to you. You said I didn't get to know him well enough. Starting tomorrow, I will get to know him well enough. Then you can compare the two of you and choose whoever is better. How about that? Wang Shitong became more excited as she spoke, and looked at Chen Yanning with anticipation. Chen Yanning frowned, isn't this bad? Wang Shitong disagreed, what's wrong with that? Who doesn't have the right to choose? Oh, don't hesitate, it's settled. I'll tell my little brother about your situation later and see what he says. After saying that, Wang Shitong was afraid that Chen Yanning would go back on her word, so she stood up and walked out, it's settled. Chen Yanning hadn't finished speaking yet, but Wang Shitong had already left in a hurry. She sighed and could only swallow her words back into her stomach. King Feng Building. After Chen Yuan returned to the company, he went to Zhao Mingyu's office first. Boss Zhao, I have completed the task you assigned to me. Zhao Mingyu was busy processing documents. She looked up at Chen Yuan and asked in surprise, you've been coaxed so quickly. Chen Yuan nodded, well, Ms. Shen is a reasonable person. She will be fine after she apologizes. And she also said that she will not stop investing in our company just because I made her unhappy. Good job. Zhao Mingyu nodded approvingly, from now on, you are an official member of Qianlanlan, congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Zhao, for your kindness. Chen Yuan looked happy, Boss Zhao, if you don't have any other instructions, I'll go to work first. Wait a moment. Zhao Mingyu called Chen Yuan over, lowered her head and took out a stack of red bills from the drawer in front of her. I promised you before that as long as you can please Mr. Chen, I will give you 5,000 as a bonus immediately. Take it. Zhao Mingyu stretched out her hand and handed it forward. Chen Yuan was surprised. Boss Zhao, are you really giving it to me? Zhao Mingyu said seriously, you have done a great job. I promise to reward you. How can I break my promise? Chen Yuan looked at Zhao Mingyu hesitantly and was overjoyed in his heart. Yesterday he thought Zhao Mingyu had only said that verbally. I didn't expect that this beautiful boss would actually do it for real. Thank you, President Zhao. You are a kind person. Under your leadership, our Qianlanlan brand will surely become famous all over the world. Okay, get busy. Zhao Mingyu smiled, waved her hand, and continued to work. Okay, Mr. Zhao. I'll be busy now. If you need anything, just call me. Chen Yuan nodded and walked out of the office holding the bill. With these $5,000, I won't have to worry about the landlord, old Biden, anymore. After putting the money in his pocket, Chen Yuan returned to the marketing department and found that almost half of his colleagues were gone. The older sister who had originally sat next to him was also nowhere to be seen. Probably he went to implement the plan. He was not called because there was nothing for him to do. I didn't think much about it and turned on the computer to continue studying sanitary napkins. The proposal submitted to Zhao Mingyu in the morning was just a gimmick to create awareness for the brand Qianlanlan, but the subsequent marketing should still focus on product quality. He learned that sanitary napkins on the market, even those from big brands, occasionally expose worrying quality problems, leaving consumers helpless. Chen Yuan believed that Zhao Mingyu must have seen this market and felt that there was great potential for development, or she herself was a victim of defective products, so she decided to start a business making sanitary napkins. At the same time, Chen Yuan also believes that his plan can be understood by more consumers to a certain extent. As he got to know the company's products better and did some research in the market, Chen Yuan realized that life is not easy for women in many cases. Many times, even though it is clearly a problem with the product, people think it is because of their own poor health that causes various problems below. He should have eaten fine grains, but ended up eating only bran. Seeing the sun gradually setting outside the window, Chen Yuan looked at the time and it was time to get off work. Just then, a WeChat message came on my phone. When Chen Yuan saw that the message was from Wang Shitong, he was slightly stunned, thinking that after the matter fell through, the two would never have any contact again. Could it be that there is some new hope? When he opened the message, he saw that it was Wang Shitong asking him to have dinner. She said that after 2 days of hard work, her best friend finally gave in. While eating, let us talk about that best friend's situation. Chen Yuan thought about it and decided that since he wasn't going to work overtime tonight, it wouldn't hurt to go and find out. So I replied to Wang Shitong. Okay, Aunt Tong, please reserve a seat. I'll be there after I get off work. Afterwards, Wang Shitong sent a location message. It's a coffee shop called Mayun. Half an hour later, Chen Yuan packed up and left work. Mayun coffee shop was a bit far away, so Chen Yuan took a taxi. However, he encountered a traffic jam on the way and it took him almost an hour to get there. As soon as he got off the car, he saw Wang Shitong standing at the door. Chen Yuan stepped forward and said repeatedly, Aunt Tong, I'm sorry, there is a traffic jam on the road. Wang Shitong felt like she hadn't seen Chen Yuan for a long time when she saw him again. It doesn't matter. I haven't gotten off work yet anyway. Chen Yuan was stunned. Aunt Tong, do you work here? Wang Shitong smiled and nodded, it's about the same. I own the store. So that's how it is. Chen Yuan suddenly realized. Wang Shitong said, don't stand here, come in with me. Chen Yuan nodded and followed Wang Shitong. In the store, Wang Shitong found an empty table nearby and asked Chen Yuan to sit down. Would you like to try our signature tender steak? Okay, it's all up to Aunt Tong. Chen Yuan nodded with a smile. Before the steak came, Wang Shitong explained to Chen Yuan, Brother Chen Yuan, this is the case. After 2 days of persuasion from me, my best friend agreed reluctantly. However, she is still a little worried. You know, we have only known each other for 2 days, and I don't know you very well. Well, I'll tell you about my best friend first, and then you can tell me more about yourself, your family background, your dating history, etc. You can also talk about your personality. Anyway, just talk about whatever you want to say. Chen Yuan looked at Wang Shitong with sincerity in his eyes. He also asked her to come to his shop, which was also a sign of sincerity. Okay, Aunt Tong, go ahead. Chapter 13 Field Trip. Wang Shitong hesitated for a moment and said, she is 40 years old this year. She has her own business, and it is quite successful. Both of her parents are teachers. Now they live in their hometown. Before she was 30, she was also a teacher. Later, because of divorce, she quit her job to start her own business. If I remember correctly, she got married when she was 27 and divorced when she was 30. After the divorce, she focused on her career. That was also when I met her. She remained single for the entire decade. Well, that's roughly the situation. Chen Yuan listened and nodded. Aunt Tong, can I ask you something? Of course, if you ask. Why did she get divorced? Well, Wang Shitong sighed. To be honest, it was a mistake. The man was introduced to her by a vice president of her school. He was a self-employed person and said that he was very good. She thought she was getting old and her family was pushing her to get married, so they got married not long after they met. But after they got married, they had no children, and neighbors started gossiping about her behind her back. Her parents-in-law also gradually became cold to her, and they even instigated her son to divorce her. Chen Yuan asked, so she didn't go to the hospital for a checkup? I'm going to check. Wang Shitong nodded and even couldn't help laughing. Brother, do you know what the test results are? Chen Yuan tried to guess and said, it shouldn't be your best friend's problem, right? Wang Shitong said, it's really not her fault, but the truth is much more outrageous than you can imagine. Chen Yuan's interest was immediately piqued. Why is it so outrageous? Well, Wang Shitong opened her mouth but quickly stopped, changing the subject and saying, well, this is about her privacy, so I'm sorry I can't tell you for now, but when you two get to know each other better, you can let her say it herself. All right. Chen Yuan nodded, and there was no problem, so he said, Aunt Tong, let me tell you about my situation. I am 23 years old this year, and I have just graduated from college for half a year. My parents died early, and I have no brothers or sisters. Now I am the only one at home. As for the love history, Chen Yuan blushed as he spoke. I don't know if it counts, but when I was a freshman, a junior said she liked me. We were together for 2 months, held hands, and then broke up. Wang Shitong asked, you don't like her? No. Chen Yuan shook his head. To be honest, I still liked her a lot, but later she got together with another sophomore boy. Why? Wang Shitong was puzzled. She was the one who said she liked you at the beginning, and she was also the one who said she wanted to break up. It's only been 2 months. Could it be that you haven't been good enough to her? Chen Yuan smiled bitterly. Who wouldn't be devoted to their first love? She's a junior in college, and she's worried that it'll be hard to find a job after graduation. And it just so happens that the guy's family owns a company, and has been pursuing her behind her back. Oh. I understand. Wang Shitong suddenly realized, for the sake of career, he abandoned his lover. Well, I can only say that everyone has their own choices. So did they stay together forever? No. Chen Yuan shook his head. It seems that they were together for more than 2 months. Then I heard that the man's family company went bankrupt, his father jumped off the building, and his mother went crazy overnight. He dropped out of school a few days later. Then your ex-girlfriend's efforts were in vain. Wang Shitong couldn't help but laugh. Oh, by the way, you are so handsome. There must be a lot of girls who like you during college. Tell me the truth, how many relationships have you had? No more. Chen Yuan shook his head. From then on, I focused on my studies until graduation. Hearing this, Wang Shitong suddenly realized a more outrageous question. She was afraid that it would be heard by the people in the living room not far away and would hurt Chen Yuan's face, so she moved closer to Chen Yuan and lowered her voice. The only time we were in love was limited to holding hands, which means that you are still a. Wang Shitong didn't say those 2 words, but she believed that Chen Yuan knew what she was talking about. Chen Yuan blushed, but fortunately the waiter brought the steak, which eased the embarrassment a little. Brother, don't be restrained, eat. Wang Shitong greeted him. Okay. Chen Yuan nodded and started using his knife and fork. After taking 2 bites, Wang Shitong asked, how does it taste? It's delicious. Chen Yuan nodded in amazement. Aunt Tong, I'm not afraid of you laughing at me, but this steak is better than any steak I've ever eaten. It must be very expensive, right? Wang Shitong smiled and said, it's not expensive, just over 100 yuan per portion, but the method of frying this steak came from my best friend. It's because of this steak that my store's business is good. Chen Yuan exclaimed, your best friend is really amazing. Wang Shitong smiled and said, I already have a basic understanding of your situation. I'll tell her later. After eating steak, Chen Yuan saw that it was getting late and prepared to go back. Wang Shitong said, brother, where do you live? I'll take you there. Chen Yuan declined, Aunt Tong, no need, I can just take a taxi. Wang Shitong insisted, it's okay, I'll take you there. Chen Yuan had no choice but to get into Wang Shitong's Mercedes. More than 40 minutes later, the two arrived at the door of the apartment. Aunt Tong, thank you for sending me back. Be careful on your way back. Wang Shitong curled her lips, why, I came all the way here to send you back, and you're not going to invite me upstairs for a drink of water. Chen Yuan frowned secretly. Aunt Tong wanted to conduct a field investigation on me for the sake of her best friend. Well then. Aunt Tong, then come with me. Chen Yuan said generously. Anyway, I can stand the test. Wang Shitong got off the car with a smile. Just then, the old landlord came out of the apartment and saw Chen Yuan at a glance. Chen Yuan, you're back just in time. I was looking for you. Chen Yuan asked, what's wrong? The landlord looked impatient. What's the matter? Did you forget what I told you a few days ago? How are you thinking about renewing the lease? If you don't want to rent it, vacate the house as soon as possible. Chen Yuan said quickly, rent, of course. The rent for half a year is 7,200 yuan. I have 5,000 yuan in cash. I will transfer the remaining 2,200 yuan to you via WeChat. As he spoke, Chen Yuan took out the bonus that Zhao Mingyu had given him. The landlord was stunned. You haven't worked yet, where did you get so much money? As he spoke, the old landlord noticed that there was a woman standing next to Chen Yuan. And you can tell at first glance that she is a rich woman. The landlord looked at Chen Yuan again and immediately thought of something. The next second, he pulled Chen Yuan aside and said, Chen Yuan, how could you do this? Not being able to find a job is only temporary. You can't become someone's gigolo just because of this. Once you embark on this path, you will never be able to think about having a stable job again. It will ruin you. Well, maybe I pushed you too far. The landlord looked at the money in his hand, gritted his teeth, and stuffed it back to Chen Yuan. You should return the money. As a man, you should always stand up straight. I can give you a delay in paying the rent for a while. Chapter 14. See you on Saturday. Looking at the landlord, Chen Yuan felt inexplicably moved. He knew that the old man had a sharp tongue but a soft heart. The old man always acts sternly when facing his tenants because he is afraid that some tenants will think he is easy to talk to and deliberately delay paying their rent. Uncle Chen, you misunderstood. Chen Yuan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He stuffed the money back into his pocket and explained, this money wasn't given to me by her, and I didn't act as a gigolo. I found a job yesterday, and this is the bonus my boss gave me. Your boss gives you a bonus on your second day at work. Why? Your boss is a woman. The landlord, Uncle Chen, looked suspicious. He glanced at Wang Shitong, who was not far away, and asked, who is she then? My little daughter also has the same woolen coat she is wearing. She bought it half a month ago and spent more than 20,000 yuan. This woman is obviously a high-spending person. How did a poor boy like you get in touch with her? Chen Yuan felt a headache after hearing this. Uncle Chen, I know you mean well, but this is a long story, so don't ask me any more. Just count the money and go home quickly. Uncle Chen moved his mouth, but swallowed his words back. Okay, then I'll go back first. After saying that, he turned and left, not forgetting to glance at Wang Shitong vigilantly before leaving. Chen Yuan let out a long sigh and quickly came to Wang Shitong. Aunt Tong, I'm sorry to have kept you waiting for so long. It's okay. Wang Shitong smiled indifferently. The old man looked fierce just now, but he seemed to care about you. Chen Yuan nodded, cold mouth but warm heart. It's a long story, Aunt Tong, let's go upstairs. Good. Wang Shitong nodded and followed Chen Yuan. After a while, the two took the elevator to the 8th floor. The place in front is where I live. Chen Yuan took out the key and pointed forward. Wang Shitong looked around. Maybe because there were so many people living here, many doors were filled with garbage, shoes, and other messy things, which made her frown secretly. Brother, you live here? Chen Yuan smiled awkwardly. It's a bit messy, but it's close to my workplace. Wang Shitong pursed her lips silently and said nothing. Chen Yuan opened the door and said, Aunt Tong, please come in. Wang Shitong stood at the door, took a look, and then walked in. The room was very clean and there was nothing messy. It was much better than the situation in the corridor. In an instant, my impression of Chen Yuan became better. And she found an even better place. It's just that Chen Yuan's room has no smell. Chen Yuan, I didn't expect your room to be so tidy. Wang Shitong couldn't help but praise him. Chen Yuan smiled. I have been without a mother since I was a child, so I clean the house by myself most of the time. I am used to it. The room is not big, you can look around. I will pour you a glass of water. Thank you. Wang Shitong nodded and walked to the balcony to take a look. The view outside was good. She turned around and Chen Yuan handed her the water. Then she went to the kitchen and saw the oil, salt, sauce and vinegar on the countertop. She asked, Are you still cooking by yourself? Chen Yuan said, Well, a home for two is a home, and a home for one is also a home. The main thing is that you can save money by cooking by yourself, and you can cook according to your own taste. Wang Shitong nodded in satisfaction. Well, he is a man who lives a good life. Okay, I have drunk the water, it is getting late, I should go back, you should go to bed early. After saying that, Wang Shitong turned and left. Chen Yuan sent her to the elevator, watched it go down, and then turned around and went back to their house. It was a cool night in late autumn. Wang Shitong walked out of the apartment, tightened her clothes, and called Shen Yanning. Yang Ning, I've already gone deep into it. Deepen? Deepen what? Shen Yanning sat on the sofa in the living room, eating strawberries and watching a movie, feeling completely confused. Listening to Shen Yanning's absent-minded look, Wang Shitong was a little speechless. Of course it's to go deep into my little brother in the park. What I just told you during the day, do you take it to heart? Oh, I remember now. Shen Yanning suddenly realized it, raised her hand to turn down the volume of the TV, and asked, How deep have you gotten into it? Wang Shitong also returned to the car and said, I invited him to dinner at my restaurant tonight. We talked about his family background and love history. I also went to see the place where he rented a house. Wang Shitong told Shen Yanning the situation one by one. Shen Yanning could tell that she was serious and felt a little worried. Wang Shitong, what's wrong? Is there any problem? Shen Yanning, no, I just think this is not good. Wang Shitong, oh, I know you're thinking about that little chicken, but you two aren't together yet. How about this, I'll invite my little brother from the park this Saturday, and the three of us can have a meal together and meet. If you don't think it's okay, forget it. If it looks okay, we can get in touch again. Don't worry, I won't let you down. Shen Yanning was unwilling in her heart, but Wang Shitong was so persistent that she couldn't say anything. It's just a meal, just meet each other first, then apologize to each other, and that's it. Thinking of this, Shen Yanning suddenly felt relieved. Okay, let's make an appointment for Saturday at noon. I'll go to your store. Wang Shitong, okay, it's settled then. After hanging up the phone, Wang Shitong let out a long sigh. Look at me all day long, what is it all for? The next day. It was past 5 in the morning and it was still dark. It's raining. Chen Yuan stood on the balcony and breathed a long sigh of relief. Then he looked at the weather forecast for the next 2 days. Today was Wednesday, and the rain would continue intermittently until Friday. It was basically the same as what he had seen before. This was exactly what he wanted. With a hint of excitement, Chen Yuan saw that it was still early and went back to bed. I woke up before 7 o'clock. Since I had to get up for work soon, I just didn't sleep. After washing up, I bought 2 buns on the way and arrived at the company half an hour early. I thought I had arrived early enough, but I didn't expect that most of the people in the department had already arrived. No, Director Hong, do you really have to be so stubborn? Chen Yuan walked over and complained cautiously. The coupon points are good for the month-end bonus. Hong Lu said seriously, our marketing department also has performance commissions, which are equivalent to half of the sales. Chen Yuan curled his lips and said, actually, you don't have to be so aggressive to get a high bonus. Honglu waved her hand and said, "Let's not talk about this for now. I have some questions about the plan and was planning to ask you for advice." Although Chen Yuan is a newcomer, as an old marketer, he knows how great Chen Yuan's plan is. Honglu has always admired great people. Chen Yuan went over the plan with her and specifically explained a few key steps. Honglu listened attentively and nodded continuously. 2 days later. Friday morning. On the short video platform, a video of a girl using a sanitary napkin to prevent water from dripping from the roof instantly became popular on the entire internet. The number of likes on the video soared from more than 2,000 to more than 70,000 in just 1 hour, and the number of comments reached 90,000. Chapter 15. It's on fire, it's on fire. This is what happened. A girl rented a house near her company. Because it was an old residential complex and she rented the top floor, dust and weeds accumulated on the roof all year round, resulting in poor drainage. Whenever it rained, the roof downstairs would leak and drip onto the floor with a pop sound from time to time. This girl suffers from neurasthenia. When she sleeps, she cannot bear any noise, especially the sound of dripping water in the house. For her, it was pure torture. In the past, people would use a basin or bucket to collect the water and then cover it with a towel so that the water would drip without making any sound. But after the towel is soaked with water, it will fall into the basin, and then the water will drip into the bucket, making another sound. This time I happened to have my period, and when I saw sanitary napkins on the bedside table, I suddenly had the idea to stick them on the ceiling. I never expected the effect to be so good. I slept till dawn. The girl felt that this sanitary napkin was her savior, and in a moment of excitement, she posted the video online. And all of this is Chen Yuan's marketing plan. In addition to the video itself, their amazing comments in the comments section are also part of the plan. The two complement each other. It's a big hit. Chen Yuan. Chen Yuan, look, it's on fire. Honglu looked like she had never seen the world before. She excitedly ran to Chen Yuan's workstation and almost put the screen in Chen Yuan's face. "Manager Hong, there's no need to get too close to me. I've already seen it." Chen Yuan leaned back. Honglu was still excited and said loudly to her colleagues in the department, "Look at Chen Yuan, a new employee who hasn't even had time to fully understand the company's products, but he got such a great job as soon as he got to work." Before she could even say the word force, Honglu quickly changed her words and said, "Such an amazing proposal. Look at you guys, what kind of proposals do you submit every time?" After hearing this, a group of colleagues immediately became dissatisfied and started to speak up. "Manager Hong, you said that we are the same as you, right? Manager Hong, you can't compare people." Chen Yuan was recruited by CEO Zhao himself after an interview. If he doesn't have the skills, wouldn't CEO Zhao be slapping himself in the face? That's right, Chen Yuan is a marketing genius, how can we compare to him? That's right. Who would have thought of using sanitary napkins to stop the leak? Only a genius like Chen Yuan could come up with such an unconventional approach. Honglu looked embarrassed and didn't know what to say. Chen Yuan stood up and said, "Everyone, stop praising me. You guys are steady and have done a good job. Even if there are any mistakes, you can recover in time and it won't cause much impact on the reputation of the company and the product. My approach is too wild. If I'm not careful, I will be doomed. In fact, I'm under a lot of pressure. Whether this plan can be successfully completed depends on you all. I would like to thank you all here first." Chen Yuan looked sincere and bowed to everyone. Seeing this, everyone seemed a little embarrassed. My colleague said, "Chen Yuan, we are all in the same department. We live and die together. If you are good, we are all good. Isn't that right?" Everyone agreed, "Yes, Sister Liu is right." Honglu said, "Okay, let's get to work first. The video going viral is just the first step of our plan. There are still many things waiting for us." New. Everyone responded and continued with the work at hand. Honglu turned to Chen Yuan and said, "Chen Yuan, there is an empty seat next to me. Pack up your things and move over there." Chen Yuan was stunned. "I'm fine here." Honglu said, "Sit next to me. If you have anything to say, we can talk. How come you don't even care about what your boss says now that you've become Mr. Zhao's favorite?" Chen Yuan grinned and said, "Manager Hong, look at what you said. The county magistrate is not as good as the current manager. I can ignore anyone's words, but your words are like an imperial decree to me. How can I not listen to them? Honglu chuckled, you're quite talkative, so hurry up and clean it up. Chen Yuan nodded, quickly packed up his things at his workstation, and sat down next to Honglu. Noon. It's almost time to get off work. Honglu asked Chen Yuan quietly, are you free at noon? I'll treat you to a meal. Invite me to dinner. Chen Yuan smiled in surprise, how about I treat you instead? As I was talking, a WeChat message suddenly came on my phone. When Chen Yuan saw that the message was from Wang Shitong, he quickly turned away. The message was sent via voice, and Chen Yuan was afraid that Honglu would hear it, so he immediately converted it into text. Brother, I made an appointment with my best friend. She said that we should have a quick meal at my restaurant on Saturday at noon. Can you come before 12 o'clock? Chen Yuan thought about it and replied, okay, I will be on time. After replying to the message, Chen Yuan put his phone in his pocket and prepared to go home. Honglu glanced at Chen Yuan's phone just now and saw that the message was sent by an avatar that only a woman would use. A hint of trepidation flashed across her eyes and she asked, did your girlfriend ask you out? Chen Yuan shook his head with a hint of bitterness, no, a friend invited me to dinner on Saturday. Hearing this, Honglu heaved a sigh of relief and said earnestly, you have just graduated and are still young. It is the right age to strive for success. Men should still focus on their careers. As long as their careers are successful, there will naturally be more women around them. Chen Yuan raised his eyebrows, Manager Hong, what you said is quite philosophical. Honglu raised her eyebrows and said, of course. This is a part-time course I take in college. Okay, let's not talk about this anymore. Let's go eat. We have to come back to work soon. Okay. Chen Yuan nodded and left with Honglu. The other side. CEO's office. Zhao Mingyu crossed her legs, her toes wrapped in flesh-colored stockings and wearing off-white high heels, swaying as she watched the viral video, the smile on her lips harder to suppress than a rusty AK. That kid is really something. Zhao Mingyu praised secretly. At this moment, Cao Dang appeared at the door. Seeing Zhao Mingyu's toes hooked in high heels, he swallowed subconsciously. He wanted to come over and ask Zhao Mingyu what she wanted to eat, but he swallowed the words back when they came to his lips. He walked into the office and said, Boss Zhao, it's time to get off work. Let's have a meal together. Zhao Mingyu was so immersed in joy that she didn't notice the person coming in. She was startled and frowned, how come he came in without knocking? Having said that, Zhao Mingyu hurriedly put on her shoes. Cao Dang was stunned, feeling a little embarrassed. Zhao Mingyu said, well, I have an appointment, you can go eat by yourself. Having said that, Zhao Mingyu stood up, picked up the coat hanging on the hanger, and walked straight out of the office. Cao Dang was speechless for a while and left silently. Zhao Mingyu came to the marketing department and saw that most people had left. She was a little puzzled. In the past, the marketing department was so busy that they had no time to eat, but today there was only one person left. Especially when I didn't see Chen Yuan, I felt a little disappointed. Forget it, let's just assume that the boy is unlucky. I'll just eat it myself. Zhao Mingyu muttered something and turned to leave. Chapter 16. Do you like Chen Yuan too? A restaurant near Jingfeng Building. Manager Hong, the cost of this restaurant seems quite high. I don't think it's necessary to spend so much. Chen Yuan stopped at the door and estimated that lunch for the two of them would cost at least 200 yuan. 200 yuan, he was not worried that Honglu could not afford it, it was just a simple lunch after get off work. But Honglu insisted, this is my first time inviting you to dinner. I can't take you to a fast food restaurant that costs over 10 yuan per portion, right? Besides, I'll have to rely on you in the future. Don't be polite. Let's go. Having said that, Honglu dragged Chen Yuan in. The two then found a seat in the restaurant. Honglu ordered 3 dishes and soon they started eating. The two sat face to face and gradually became familiar with each other. While eating, Chen Yuan asked, Manager Hong, how long have you been working in the company? Honglu thought for a moment and said, well, it's been almost 4 years. At that time, the company had only been established for less than half a year. What happened? Chen Yuan smiled and shook his head, nothing, just asking casually. Just as the two were eating and chatting, a beautiful figure appeared at the restaurant door. Mr. Zhao, alone. Zhao Mingyu was a regular customer of this restaurant, and the waiter saw her at first sight. Zhao Mingyu nodded and glanced around the hall, trying to find a quiet seat, when she suddenly saw Honglu. There was a man sitting opposite Honglu. The two were talking and laughing. "I'll just go over there and share the table." Zhao Mingyu raised her finger and pointed, then walked over. Har har har. Honglu was so amused by Chen Yuan's teasing that she suddenly saw Zhao Mingyu and quickly stood up. "Zhao, Mr. Zhao, why are you here too?" Chen Yuan was also startled and quickly stood up. "Boss Zhao, are you coming to eat too?" Zhao Mingyu looked at the two of them expressionlessly and asked, "You don't mind sharing the table?" Chen Yuan and Honglu looked at each other silently, and nodded awkwardly. "Of course I don't mind, Mr. Zhao, please take a seat." After saying that, Chen Yuan took the initiative to give up the seat next to him. Zhao Mingyu glanced at him and said, "I'd better sit with Manager Hong." Zhao Mingyu almost has her own recipe book for this restaurant, so the waiter brought the food to her without her having to ask. "Mr. Zhao, please enjoy your meal." After the waiter finished speaking, he turned and left. Zhao Mingyu saw the two of them standing there without moving their chopsticks, and asked, "Why aren't you eating anymore? You were talking and laughing just now, why are you no longer talking? What are you talking about that makes you look so happy?" Honglu's cheeks were slightly red, and she felt very uncomfortable. "Boss Zhao, I've almost finished eating. I'm going to work first." After saying that, he didn't care about Chen Yuan anymore and just ran away. "Why?" Chen Yuan stood up and called out, but failed to call Honglu back. Zhao Mingyu ate her food, raised her eyes and asked, "You don't want to run away too?" "Why should I run?" Chen Yuan gritted his teeth and sat down, starting to eat. Zhao Mingyu looked at the food in front of Chen Yuan and said, "Is it Honglu who invited you, or you who invited her?" Chen Yuan replied, "Manager Hong invited me." "I see." Zhao Mingyu nodded thoughtfully. "I've known Honglu for almost 4 years, and I've never seen her invite a man to dinner alone, especially someone she's only known for a few days. You're definitely the first." Chen Yuan listened and felt that there was something else behind her words. "Boss Zhao, just say whatever you want to say." Zhao Mingyu ate the food nonchalantly. "Didn't I tell you that you are the first one?" Chen Yuan, so. Zhao Mingyu didn't say anything. After a while, she almost finished her meal. She wiped her mouth, stood up and said, "I'm done. You can eat slowly." Chen Yuan frowned, feeling a little puzzled. After finishing the rice in the bowl in a few bites, he stood up and went to the cashier to pay. The waiter said, "It's already closed." Chen Yuan, who got married. The waiter said, "The one with you." "Got it, thank you." Chen Yuan nodded. Back to the company, it's just time to go to work. Chen Yuan saw that the seat next to him was empty, so he asked the colleague in front of him, "Where is Manager Hong?" The colleague replied, "It seems that Mr. Zhao called him to the office just now." "Oh, it's okay, thank you." Chen Yuan nodded in confusion without thinking much about it. The other side. CEO's office. Zhao Mingyu stared at Honglu for a long time without saying anything. Honglu was getting a little impatient being stared at, so she gritted her teeth and said, "Boss Zhao, you want to talk about Chen Yuan, right?" Zhao Mingyu looked calm, and it was impossible to tell what she was thinking at the moment. She just asked calmly, "Manager Hong, why do you suddenly want to invite Chen Yuan to dinner? We have known each other for almost 4 years, right? I think I know you quite well. Tell me, do you like him?" "Mr. Zhao, I don't have any. I've only known him for 5 days." Honglu lowered her head, her cheeks flushed. Zhao Mingyu said angrily, "It's not even written on your face yet." Honglu curled her lips and whispered, "Boss Zhao, it seems that the company doesn't have any rules against office romance, right?" This. Zhao Mingyu was embarrassed for a moment, then she said in a gentle and persuasive way, "Manager Hong, people used to say that women are born to depend on men, but as women of the new era, we must not think so. Women can also hold up half the sky, so we should also have our own careers." Honglu said, "Boss Zhao, you are right. We women can also hold up half the sky, but don't men still have to hold up the other half? Is that what I mean?" Zhao Mingyu was speechless. "Manager Hong, I watched you graduate from school until today. It's been several years, and I haven't seen you fall in love. Why are you thinking about it now?" Honglu said, "I am old now, and my family is pushing me hard. Zhao Mingyu said, I am several years older than you, and my family is pushing me even harder. I haven't even thought about it yet, so why are you so anxious? Honglu said, Boss Zhao, you are the boss, how can I compare with you? With just one word from you, countless men are willing to bow down at your feet, but I can't do that. I choose others, but others also choose me, so I can't wait any longer. Zhao Mingyu almost got angry after hearing this, then can't you change one? Hearing this, Honglu frowned, and suddenly realized something, and asked weakly, Mr. Zhao, do you like Chen Yuan too? Zhao Mingyu was touched in the heart and tried to cover it up. What nonsense are you talking about? How could I possibly like him? He is good looking and has a bit of a crooked mind, but he is useless. Honglu nodded with a smile. It turns out that Mr. Zhao doesn't have that intention towards him. I feel relieved then. No. Manager Hong, you are just being wishful thinking. Zhao Mingyu interrupted her, you like her, but does she like you? Honglu blinked blankly. Although I've never been in a relationship, isn't it said that it's easy for a girl to win over a boy? It shouldn't be that difficult, right? Chapter 17 Slowly going deeper. Marketing Department. Chen Yuan rubbed his nose and held back 2 or 3 sneezes. Not long after, Honglu returned from Zhao Mingyu's office. Chen Yuan was a little curious and asked in a low voice, Manager Hong, President Zhao wouldn't say anything to you because you didn't stay to have dinner with her, right? No, she just told me some things about work. Honglu shook her head to deny. Oh, I see. Chen Yuan nodded and said nothing more. At this time, Honglu suddenly asked, Chen Yuan, have you ever been in love? Can you teach me? Hearing this, Chen Yuan was shocked. Manager Hong, you have never been in love. Honglu blushed. I'm still asking you after we've talked about it. Chen Yuan hissed and scratched his forehead. I don't have much experience, it's basically just shopping, eating, and watching movies. As he spoke, Chen Yuan suddenly realized, Manager Hong, are you going to have a relationship? But dating is something that should be thought about by men, right? Why are you still worried about it? Honglu's cheeks felt hot. I. Chen Yuan frowned suspiciously. No, Director Hong, you are not chasing after that guy, are you? Damn, who is so outstanding. Honglu blushed, afraid that if she continued the conversation, she would be exposed. Oh, forget it, just go to work. All right. Chen Yuan nodded. In the evening, near the end of get off work, Honglu secretly glanced at Chen Yuan and wanted to invite him to dinner, but then she thought. Isn't it a bit too obvious? If I had been tipped off by what Mr. Zhao said. From then on, it would be awkward for me and Chen Yuan to be just colleagues. Thinking of this, Honglu quickly gave up. But I still couldn't help but ask. Chen Yuan, are you going home directly after get off work, or do you have any other plans? Chen Yuan shook his head, there's no show. I'm going to get a haircut, then go home to watch TV series and read novels, and then go to sleep. What's wrong? Honglu smiled slightly, as if relieved. Nothing, just asking casually. Chen Yuan felt that Honglu had been acting weird this afternoon, but as it was almost time to get off work, he decided not to think about it anymore. On their way back, Chen Yuan found a barber shop and had his hair cut a little shorter. Looking at myself in the mirror, I muttered to myself, that beautiful aunt whom I have never met tomorrow should have a good impression of me, right? Thinking of this, Chen Yuan became somewhat excited. After returning home, Chen Yuan made himself some food, took a shower later, found the clothes he would wear tomorrow, and then lay down on the bed. He first took a look at the comments in the company's video, and saw that there were a lot of heated discussions about their Tianlanlan brand, so he felt relieved. Apart from anything else, the popularity of this video alone is enough to get the job done. Afterwards, Chen Yuan began his own happy time. Watched TV series and read novels. He himself didn't know when he fell asleep. Anyway, when I woke up the next day, it was already 9 in the morning. Fuck. Chen Yuan was startled and immediately jumped up from the bed. After cleaning up, I took a shower. When we arrived at the Mayun Cafe, it was already 11:30. Aunt Tong, am I not late? Chen Yuan saw Wang Shitong as soon as he entered the door. Of course you're not late. Come on, I'll take you to the private room upstairs. Wang Shitong said with a smile. Chen Yuan nodded and went upstairs with her. On the way, Chen Yuan asked anxiously, Aunt Tong, is she here? Wang Shitong smiled slightly. She's here. She'll be in the private room at 10 o'clock. But don't worry. She just came here early to accompany me. That's good. Chen Yuan breathed a sigh of relief. Soon, Wang Shitong brought him to the door of a private room. Yang Ning, people are coming. Having said that, Wang Shitong pushed the door open and went in. When Chen Yuan heard the word Yang Ning, his mind went blank. The name Yang Ning is not a common one. I guess there's no other one like him in the whole Jiangsu. In the private room, Shen Yanning was playing with her mobile phone. When she heard someone coming, she stood up hurriedly. Wang Shitong was about to introduce them when she turned around and saw Chen Yuan still standing outside the door in a daze. She waved. Chen Yuan, what are you daydreaming about? Come in quickly. In the private room, Shen Yanning's head also buzzed. Chen Yuan. Shen Yanning muttered to herself, then stood up and took a few steps toward the door. At this time, Chen Yuan also walked in from outside the door. The two looked at each other blankly. At this moment, they could no longer tell whether this was a dream or reality. Wang Shitong looked around at the two of them. Before she finished speaking, Shen Yanning was the first to react. Shitong, is this the little brother in the park you told me about? Yes. Wang Shitong nodded. What's wrong? Is there any problem? As she spoke, Wang Shitong even deliberately turned her head to look Chen Yuan up and down. A sunny and handsome guy, very nice. At this time, Chen Yuan also recovered. Boss Shen, why is it you? Wang Shitong was slightly stunned and frowned. Why, do you know each other? Shen Yanning was a little amused at this moment. She glanced at Chen Yuan and said to Wang Shitong, do you know who he is? He is the little chicken feather you mentioned. What? Wang Shitong widened her eyes, covered her red lips with one hand, her face full of disbelief, and pulled Chen Yuan close to her with the other hand, saying, you said he is that little chicken hair. Chen Yuan looked confused. Little chicken feathers. What little chicken feathers? Seeing his silly look, Shen Yanning and Wang Shitong looked at each other and couldn't help laughing. Call. After a moment, Wang Shitong let out a long sigh and said with a tired look, if I had known that you two knew each other, I wouldn't have had to go through so much trouble. Chen Yuan really never dreamed that the best friend Wang Shitong mentioned, who had a gentle personality, beautiful looks and had been single for 10 years, was actually Shen Yanning. But besides being shocked, he wanted to know more about how he became a nobody. Aunt Tong, Mr. Shen, what's going on with the little chicken hair? You'll know later. Shen Yanning directly addressed the question. She was afraid of exposing the fact that she secretly liked Chen Yuan, and she was even more afraid that Chen Yuan would know that she was two-timing. Wang Shitong saw what she was thinking at a glance, and quickly changed the topic to the purpose of today's meeting, saying, well, since you two know each other, I won't introduce you in detail. I have no doubt about the character of the two of you. I believe you won't doubt it either. So today I just want to say one thing. First, take a look at each other. Are you satisfied with the image? If you are satisfied, we will confirm our relationship from today. In the future, you can try to get in touch with each other, slowly go deeper, and get to know each other better. Give your love to the other person as much as possible. Of course, if one of us is dissatisfied with the other, we will go our separate ways after this meal. Chen Yuan, you speak first. My Yang Ning, are you satisfied? Chapter 18. Auntie begins to take the initiative. Wang Shitong looked at Chen Yuan. She knew that Shen Yanning was absolutely satisfied with Chen Yuan. After all, this was the little chicken feather that brought Shen Yanning back to life. If Shen Yanning spoke first and Chen Yuan was unwilling, Shen Yanning would completely lose face. If Chen Yuan said he didn't want to do it first, then Shen Yanning could also say she didn't want to do it, so she wouldn't lose face. Chen Yuan, you have to think carefully, 3,000 yuan a day. Wang Shitong was afraid that Shen Yanning would lose the opportunity, so she quickly added a sentence. Chen Yuan looked Shen Yanning up and down, and then he noticed Shen Yanning's outfit today. She was wearing a slim-fitting high-necked shirt, a thin silver necklace around her neck, thick black leggings, a black leather skirt, and black high heels on her feet that were slightly shiny. Her hair is black and shiny. Beautiful face, top-notch figure. Maturity and charm, mixed with the charming scent of perfume, make you a little intoxicated in the next second. Then, Chen Yuan said seriously, Mr. Shen condescended to talk to me about love, how could I refuse? Hearing this, Wang Shitong secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Okay, as long as you agree. Then she asked Chen Yanning as usual, Yanning, it's your turn to express your opinion. Chen Yanning felt a smug joy in her heart that she could not suppress. She pursed her red lips and nodded, saying, if there is a handsome guy who doesn't mind my age and is willing to date me, why wouldn't I agree? Very good, then we have reached an agreement. Wang Shitong looked at the two of them and solemnly announced, I declare that from this moment on, you are boyfriend and girlfriend. As she spoke, she took Chen Yuan's hand with one hand and Chen Yanning's hand with the other, and placed Chen Yanning's hand in Chen Yuan's palm. Chen Yuan, my Yanning will be handed over to you from now on. Remember what I told you before. Chen Yuan held Chen Yanning's hand and felt a softness. He nodded and said, I remember. Chen Yanning has been active in the business world for 10 years, from an unknown divorced woman to a well-known female billionaire in Jiangsu with a net worth of tens of billions. She has met countless people and there is nothing in the world that she has not seen. But at this moment, she was shy. Wang Shitong saw that she was a little uncomfortable, and then said, well, it's getting late, let's eat first. Having said that, she arranged for the two of them to sit down and then asked the waiter to serve the food. At the dinner table, Wang Shitong saw that both of them were a little restrained, but she didn't say anything. After all, they were not in a free relationship, so it was normal for them to feel a little uncomfortable for a while. After dinner, Wang Shitong said to Chen Yuan, Yang Ning has nothing to do this afternoon. If you have nothing to do, take Yang Ning out for a walk. The weather is good today, not too cold or too hot. No problem. Chen Yuan nodded and agreed immediately. Being able to date such a top-notch, beautiful and wealthy woman was enough to brag about for the rest of his life. Afterwards, Wang Shitong said to Chen Yuan, please wait downstairs for a while. I have something to say to Yang Ning. Good. Chen Yuan nodded and went downstairs first. After Chen Yuan left, Chen Yanning said proudly, didn't you say that my little chicken hair might be someone who wants to cheat money and sex? What else do you have to say now? How would I know that my little brother and your little chicken feather are the same person? Wang Shitong smiled awkwardly and waved her hand, okay, let's talk about business. Chen Yuan doesn't have much of a love history. I told you before, you have to take the initiative when necessary. I know. Chen Yanning nodded, picked up a black cashmere coat from the shelf beside her, and put it on her arm. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Wang Shitong smiled slightly, go ahead. On the sidewalk at the door. Chen Yuan was bored and looking at the signs of shops around him when he suddenly smelled a fragrance. He turned around and saw Chen Yanning had come to his side. Boss Chen, are you done talking so quickly? Chen Yuan thought it would take a while. Chen Yanning nodded, just 2 sentences, and then she came down. Then let's just take a walk. Okay. Chen Yuan looked around and said to the right, then let's go over there. Okay. Chen Yanning nodded. Then the two walked side by side. Chen Yanning didn't say anything, waiting for Chen Yuan to say something. And Chen Yuan was also waiting for Chen Yanning to say something. In the end, neither of them spoke. As the two walked further and further away, the situation became more and more awkward. Finally, both of them looked at the ground awkwardly. Chen Yuan thought that it would be too embarrassing to continue like this, and when he looked up, there was a movie theater in front of him. At this moment, Chen Yanning also noticed the cinema. The next second, they both said almost at the same time, how about we go to the movies? After their words fell, the two of them laughed at the same time. After a while, they arrived at the cinema. There's a movie starting in 5 minutes, and they are already checking tickets. Chen Yuan quickly went to buy 2 tickets and wanted to buy some Coke and popcorn. After all, this was a must-have package for couples to watch a movie. But Chen Yanning said that she had just eaten and didn't want to eat anything now. So Chen Yuan just bought 2 cups of Coke. Boss Chen, let's go. Good. Chen Yanning nodded and followed Chen Yuan. The two entered the screening room, found their seats, and the prologue of the movie began to play. Chen Yanning held a Coke in her hand, sat upright, and stared at the screen in front of her seriously. But only 10 minutes later, Chen Yanning took off her shoes, sat on the chair with her legs folded, and leaned slightly towards Chen Yuan. After a while, perhaps because the plot was a bit monotonous, or perhaps because the daily work was too tiring, Chen Yanning closed her eyes as she watched, and her head, which was leaning on the back of the chair, slid onto Chen Yuan's shoulder. Chen Yuan didn't expect that she was so careless and fell asleep so quickly. The light in the screening room was very dim, with only the light from the screen flickering on her face. Even so, Chen Yuan felt that Chen Yanning was incredibly beautiful when he looked at her. In order to make Chen Yanning lean more comfortably, Chen Yuan gently folded up the armrest between the two of them. In just a moment, Chen Yanning's body slid directly onto his legs. Chen Yuan was startled, and fearing that she would fall to the ground, he held her head with one hand and supported her shoulder with the other. But he soon suspected that Chen Yanning was just pretending to sleep. A normal person may fall asleep on someone's shoulder without realizing it. But there is absolutely no such person who would fall directly on someone else's lap while sleeping, or even stay comfortably in someone else's arms for a few times without waking up. Chen Yuan suddenly realized that his aunt had taken the initiative. "Mr. Shen." Chen Yuan called out softly. However, Chen Yanning did not agree. When I lowered my head and was about to call Chen Yanning again, I found that she seemed to have fallen asleep while pretending. Chen Yuan looked at the cashmere coat that Chen Yanning had placed beside him, picked it up and put it on her. It was not until the end of the movie that people around her started to get up one after another. Chen Yanning seemed to be bumped into and suddenly woke up. I fell asleep. Chen Yanning suddenly sat up and looked around in confusion. "Chen Yuan, have I been sleeping on your legs this whole time?" Chen Yuan nodded. The lights in the theater were turned on. Chen Yanning saw Chen Yuan rubbing his thigh with a grin on his face and said embarrassedly, "Did your legs become numb from sleeping?" "Sorry, I started." Chapter 19 Anti-Confession. You were just pretending at first, but you didn't expect to actually fall asleep, right? Chen Yuan smiled bitterly, supported himself on a chair beside him, and staggered to his feet. Chen Yanning shrank her neck in guilt, and quickly stepped forward to support Chen Yuan, and asked timidly, "You won't blame me, right?" Chen Yuan lowered his head and smiled, "It's okay." He knew that the reason why Chen Yanning could sleep so soundly on his legs was that she had no guard against him at all. "Yang Ning." Chen Yuan called out softly. Chen Yanning's delicate body trembled. It seemed like this was the first time Chen Yuan called her name. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, let's go out first." Chen Yuan suddenly pulled Chen Yanning's hand. Just as she was about to walk out of the screening room, Chen Yanning suddenly stopped. "What's wrong?" Chen Yuan turned his head and asked. Chen Yanning stared at Chen Yuan with a serious expression. "There is something I feel sorry for you about. I think I must confess to you." For the first time, Chen Yuan felt the seriousness on Chen Yanning's face and nodded gently, "Well, go ahead." Chen Yanning felt that the theater was noisy and said, "Let's find a quiet place first. How about going to Qinghu Park?" "Okay." Chen Yuan nodded. Then the two of them took a taxi to Qinghu Park. Then Chen Yanning took him to the lake. Qinghu Park is named after it. At the lakeside, Chen Yanning pointed at the sparkling green water in front of her and said. Chen Yuan didn't say anything, just nodded. Chen Yanning continued, "When I just got divorced, I was depressed for a while and would come here to stare blankly every day. I still come here sometimes now. It's not that I miss the past, but I just feel that this place can calm me down. There's a big rock over there, let's go there." Chen Yanning raised her hand and pointed forward, then turned and walked towards it. Chen Yuan quickly followed. Chen Yanning came to the side of the stone and leaned over to blow away the dust on it. "Sit down." After Chen Yanning sat down, she greeted Chen Yuan. Chen Yuan nodded, sat down, and waited quietly for Chen Yanning to speak. Chen Yanning didn't seem so anxious anymore. She stared at the water for a while, turned her head to look at Chen Yuan, and then spoke. "Chen Yuan, I like you." Chen Yuan was slightly stunned. Before she could speak, Chen Yanning continued, I really like you. Shitong said before that she wanted to introduce a little brother to me. Whether it's possible or not, let's meet him first. I didn't agree because I met you at the vegetable market that day. At first, I just thought you were a person of good character, and I didn't have any other thoughts. Until we met again in the milk tea shop in the afternoon. You may not imagine it, but I suddenly felt a kind of destiny given by God. I turned around and told myself that if we could meet again in the vast crowd next time, I would definitely hold you tightly. I didn't expect that we would meet again the next day under the blue sky. Just that one time, you were hiding from me. Speaking of this, a mist suddenly flashed in Chen Yanning's eyes. I'm sorry, Chen Yuan felt a little regretful after thinking about it. Chen Yanning smiled with tears in her eyes and shook her head, it's okay. I'm sad that you're avoiding me, but it's also because of this that I'm really sure that I like you. Then she went on to say, later, you came to the company to find me. You were willing to treat me as a friend. You gave me hope. Although I am a little old, I can still have children. I told Shatong what I was thinking. She didn't know that the person I met at the market was you, so she didn't like you very much and even called you a little chicken. Chen Yuan couldn't help laughing, so that's how chicken feathers come from. Chen Yanning nodded and continued, she opposed my liking you, saying that you must have set up a trap to get close to me, and kept persuading me to meet the little brother she mentioned, that is, you. Of course, I didn't know that person was you. She kept encouraging me, and in the end, I just couldn't say no. Later, she suggested that we get together today to meet first. But Chen Yuan, I definitely don't have the idea of having two relationships at the same time. Chen Yanning was afraid that Chen Yuan would misunderstand, so she even raised her hand as if to swear. The reason I agreed to meet her was that I wanted to take this opportunity to make things clear to her, and also to stop Shatong from having these thoughts. What I never expected was that the brother she strongly recommended was actually you. Do you know how happy I was when I saw you? Chen Yuan nodded slightly while listening. Seeing that Chen Yanning seemed to have finished speaking, he smiled and said, Yanning, you said so much, is it a confession to me? Chen Yanning glanced around and saw that no one was staring at her. She nodded slightly, then looked at Chen Yuan sincerely and nervously, are you willing to accept my confession? Chen Yuan did not rush to answer her question. Instead, he gently held her hand, pondered for a moment, and said sincerely, I never think that age will be a stumbling block to love, but... When Chen Yanning heard the word, just, her heart rose to her throat. This means rejection. Without waiting for Chen Yuan to continue, Chen Yanning raised her hand and swore again, I really like you, and I am willing to make any changes for you. As she spoke, she even pleaded humbly, if you don't really want to be with me, can we continue to be a contractual couple? Chen Yuan suddenly smiled and said, you look nervous, but I didn't say I didn't want to. Chen Yanning's eyes gradually widened, you agreed. Chen Yuan smiled and nodded, I agree. Very good. Chen Yanning cried out excitedly and hugged Chen Yuan tightly, tears almost coming out, Chen Yuan, I knew you would never reject me. The next second, Chen Yanning took the initiative to give him a sweet kiss. This was the first time Chen Yuan felt such passionate love. I didn't expect my aunt to be so wonderful. For a moment, I couldn't tell east, west, south. TSK, what's this for? How can you be so embarrassed in broad daylight? A retired old lady who was walking in the park frowned when she saw this scene by the lake. Sister, are you envious? Chen Yanning just retracted her tongue and turned her head to confront him. The old lady was probably irritated and looked at Chen Yanning and Chen Yuan angrily. Chen Yanning is elegant and looks young, but no matter how young she looks, the age difference is still noticeable when she is with Chen Yuan. The old lady was keenly aware of this and said without mercy, I see that you are quite rich and not young anymore. Could this be your gigolo? Chen Yanning didn't get angry when she heard this. Instead, she laughed and said, Sister, are you jealous? Hearing this, the old lady almost vomited blood. She held her forehead and walked away cursing. While walking, he took out his cell phone and made a call. Yeah, I feel dizzy, please take me back. Chapter 20 Sincerity is the ultimate skill. Parking lot. After Zhao Mingyu hung up the phone, she saw her mother coming from afar and went to greet her with a concerned look on her face. Mom, you were fine when you just went out, why are you suddenly dizzy? Should I take you to the hospital? The old lady shook her head and said, No, I was just angry for a moment. Zhao Mingyu subconsciously looked at the people around her and asked, Who made you angry? The old lady turned around and pointed, It's not far ahead. Kissing in broad daylight, you have no shame. Zhao Mingyu didn't know whether to laugh or cry when she heard this. They are a young couple in love, and kissing is not against the law. Why are you so anxious? The old lady said, What young couple? The girl looks older than you, and I think the guy is only in his 20s. Zhao Mingyu said, Even so, there is no need for you to be angry. The old lady said, Okay, let's not talk about that woman anymore. Let's talk about you. She is older than you, but she can still find someone in her 20s. Why are you still single? My old sisters have grandchildren in elementary school. Every time I see them, I have to hide, for fear that they will ask me when I will have a grandchild. My dear daughter, I am already 60 years old. I can no longer hold my grandchildren. I will never have the chance to be proud of myself in this life. Zhao Mingyu was also confused after hearing this. Oh, Mom, why are you talking about me again? There are so many things to do in the company every day, how can I have the time to spare? The old lady said, you can't be single forever. You should at least have a plan or something. By the way, the electrical engineer who returned from overseas that your cousin told you about last time is expected to return this week. You should go meet him. Okay, we'll talk about it later. Zhao Mingyu nodded quickly. Are you still dizzy? Do you want to go home or to the hospital? I have to go to the company later. The old lady said, you can go to the company first, and I can take a taxi back later. Zhao Mingyu was a little worried about her mother's health and asked, are you sure you can do it? The old lady said, just now my blood pressure went up a little, but now it's fine. You can go back to the company as soon as possible. Okay, I'll go first then. After saying that, Zhao Mingyu got in the car and left. As soon as he left, Chen Yanning and Chen Yuan came over hand in hand. The old lady looked at Chen Yuan from afar. The boy was young, tall, and handsome. If her daughter could find someone like him, wouldn't she be able to give birth to twins every year? Thinking of this wonderful thing, the old lady went up to greet him with a smile. That girl, I'm sorry for what happened just now. It was my aunt who was reckless. Chen Yanning was stunned. What was wrong with this old lady? The old aunt glanced at Chen Yuan, and the more she looked at him, the better he seemed to her. So she took Chen Yanning's arm and said, Miss, can I talk to you alone? Don't worry, I have no bad intentions. Although Chen Yanning felt that the old lady's behavior was a bit strange, she did not look like she had any bad intentions. Besides, there were cameras in the parking lot and Chen Yuan was nearby, so she was not worried. Then he followed the old lady to the side. Chen Yanning got straight to the point, Big sister, please say whatever you want to say. The old lady nodded and said, it's like this. I just want to ask you how to find a boyfriend who is similar to you. Chen Yanning looked surprised. Sister, you must be 60 years old, right? The old lady was also stunned. Seeing that Chen Yanning seemed to have misunderstood, she quickly explained, it's not me who wants to find one. At my age, I no longer have the passion. I want to find one for my daughter. She is in her early 30s. Let alone a boyfriend, she doesn't even have a decent male friend around her. I'm anxious. Hearing this, Chen Yanning finally breathed a sigh of relief. She thought that this old sister had been stimulated by something and wanted to find a young boyfriend to play with. Girl, please share your experience with auntie so that I can pass it on to my daughter. The old auntie couldn't wait. Chen Yanning turned her head and glanced at Chen Yuan. She felt kind in her heart. Seeing that the elder sister looked sincere, she thought for a moment and said, Sister, I think that no matter what type of boyfriend you are looking for, you should first consider the person's character and personality. The old lady nodded repeatedly, yeah, I know that. Let's put that aside for now and talk about how to find a boyfriend like yours, who is this age. My daughter probably likes younger people, too. Chen Yanning smiled secretly and said, in the end, there is no skill. You just need to be sincere and let the other person know that you really like him. As the old saying goes, it's easy for a girl to chase a boy. As long as your daughter is not ugly and has a good personality, I believe no man will refuse her. The old lady nodded and said confidently, well, my daughter is very beautiful and has a good personality. If it's as simple as you said, then there shouldn't be any big problems. As she spoke, the old lady quickly took out her phone and said, girl, let's add each other on WeChat. If there is anything I don't understand later, I can ask you for help. This is not necessary, right? Chen Yanning politely declined, saying that she was very busy with her work. The old lady in front of her looked retired and had nothing to do every day, yet she could ask hundreds of questions a day. If I add this person on WeChat, I will probably become her professional customer service in the future. Sister, I have something else to do, so I'll leave first. Chen Yanning was afraid that the older sister would pester her, so she hurried away. But before leaving, he did not forget to say, Sister, sincerity is the ultimate skill, remember. After saying that, Chen Yanning walked to Chen Yuan, took Chen Yuan's arm and left quickly. I was a little disappointed that the old lady didn't add me on WeChat, but fortunately I didn't gain nothing at all. Sincerity is the ultimate skill. The old lady muttered to herself and suddenly forgot an important question. So where can I get in touch with young guys? You can't just ask on the street, right? Hey, girl. The old lady anxiously shouted in the direction where Chen Yuan left, but Chen Yuan's figure had already disappeared in the crowd. The other side. Chen Yuan watched the sun gradually set in the west. Chen Yuan didn't seem to have any intention of parting, and she didn't know what he was thinking. Chen Yuan, where are we going now? Chen Yuan asked. Chen Yuan was a little confused at this moment. He didn't know what a couple in love should do together every day. Just then, WeChat came on my phone. When I opened it, it was a message from the work group. Yang Ning, I may have to go to the company, Chen Yuan said apologetically, secretly relieved in his heart. Then I'll take you to the company. As Chen Yuan was speaking, a taxi happened to come by the roadside and she stopped it. Without waiting for Chen Yuan to speak, Chen Yuan got in the car first and said, Master, let's go to Jingfeng building. Chen Yuan had no choice but to get on the car. In the car, Chen Yuan saw that Chen Yuan was silent and seemed to have some concerns, so she asked softly, Don't you want others to know about our relationship? Chapter 21 Strike while the iron is hot. Yang Ning, don't think too much, that's not what I meant. Chen Yuan looked solemn, it's just that there are some things I haven't figured out yet. Chen Yuan didn't know what Chen Yuan was thinking. Maybe he felt that there were some concerns about being with her. Since Chen Yuan hasn't figured it out yet, there's no point in me sitting in the car. Master, please pull over. Good. The driver glanced at the two people in the central rearview mirror, then quietly parked the car in front. Chen Yuan moved his mouth, watched Chen Yuan get off the car, and finally said nothing. 10 minutes later, Chen Yuan arrived at Jingfeng building. I went upstairs to the company and saw several colleagues from the e-commerce and sales departments were in a hurry, and I didn't know what had happened. At this moment, Honglu saw him coming and said excitedly, Chen Yuan, it's hot, our Qianlanlan is really hot this time, do you know? Today alone, we sold 100,000 orders. 100,000 orders. I never dared to think about it before. Hearing this, Chen Yuan finally understood why his colleagues from the e-commerce and sales departments were so anxious. Fine. Chen Yuan nodded. It was expected that the brand would become popular. However, selling 100,000 orders a day is indeed a bit beyond expectations. After all, the plan is only halfway done here. You asked me to come to the company in a hurry. Is there any problem with the implementation of the plan? Chen Yuan asked. Honglu nodded. Yes, I am a little undecided. I just want to ask, should we still follow the plan? Or should we make some minor changes? This is not what I mean. This is what Mr. Zhao means. As he was speaking, a long-legged female colleague wearing grey and white over the knee-thick stockings walked over. Manager Hong, this is Chen Yuan, right? Yes. Honglu nodded. Chen Yuan, let me introduce you. This is Mr. Zhao's secretary Yang. She had something going on at home a few days ago and has not been to work. Chen Yuan suddenly realized, hello, Secretary Yang. Yang nodded, Boss Zhao asked you to go to her office. Okay, got it. Chen Yuan nodded and said to Honglu, Manager Hong, I'll go over first. Go. Honglu smiled slightly and watched Chen Yuan disappear from her sight. Manager Hong, why are you staring at him? Yang asked puzzledly. Do I have one? Honglu was startled and quickly changed the subject. Well, Secretary Yang, are you going to the e-commerce department? Is there anything I can help you with? Yang said, now that you mention it, it's true. Originally, we arranged for the live broadcast to be 12 hours long, but now Mr. Zhao wants it to be 24 hours long. However, we don't have enough anchors, so Director Hong, how about you take over for a few hours? Me? I can't, I won't go. Honglu was shocked and waved her hands repeatedly. Yang knew that Honglu would not agree, so she handed the folder to Honglu and said, then run an errand for me and give this production schedule to Director Liu. I can run errands, but I really can't go live. Honglu smiled and nodded, took the folder in her hand, and said, then I'll go over first. Yang nodded, and then walked quickly towards the e-commerce department. The other side. Chen Yuan came to Zhao Mingyue's office. Mr. Zhao, you're looking for me. Well, you came just in time. Zhao Mingyu waved her hand, motioning him to sit down opposite her, and went straight to the point. You know what's going on now, right? Chen Yuan nodded. Manager Hong just told me that we have sold 100,000 orders today. Zhao Mingyu said, this is not the most important thing. Our online sales were not very good before, and we did not sell many products through offline channels for a while, but the production at the factory has been continuing. We have accumulated a lot of inventory in the past 3 months. Today, we have cleared all our inventory. Hearing this, Chen Yuan couldn't help but frown. It's not a good idea to ship out the inventory, right? Our reputation is booming right now, you. Zhao Mingyu knew what he wanted to say, and smiled slightly and said, you have thought of it, how could I not think of it? I have explained it to the e-commerce department and asked the anchor to clearly state that there is a batch of inventory, and the price is also 5 yuan lower than normal. That's good. Chen Yuan breathed a sigh of relief. Zhao Mingyu continued, now it's like this. According to your plan, we should let the evaluation anchor come on stage next to keep the heat going. There is no problem with this, but I would like to add a little more now. I don't think it will affect the plan. Chen Yuan murmured and nodded, Boss Zhao, you go ahead. Zhao Mingyu said, I want to strike while the iron is hot and incubate an internet celebrity from within our company. In this way, even if the brand's popularity fades, we at least have this internet celebrity as a backup. Chen Yuan understood what Zhao Mingyu meant and said, that's no problem. Does Mr. Zhao have a suitable candidate? Zhao Mingyu said, yes, it's my secretary, Yang Zhen. You should have met her just now, right? I have seen it. Chen Yuan nodded, thinking back to Secretary Yang's long legs, and smiled in his heart. Zhao Mingyu was indeed good at selecting people. What do you think of Secretary Yang's temperament? Zhao Mingyu asked. Chen Yuan said, no problem at all, but if you let Secretary Yang become an internet celebrity, then won't you have no one around you? Zhao Mingyu smiled and narrowed her eyes, as if she had already made a plan. You don't have to worry about this. All right. Chen Yuan nodded and stood up. Then Mr. Zhao, if you have nothing else to say, I will go back first. Go ahead. Zhao Mingyu waved her hand. After leaving the company, Chen Yuan thought that Chen Yanning must have been angry when she got off the car, so he called her and they could have dinner together. But no one answered the call. It seems like he's really angry. Chen Yuan sighed helplessly, then sent a WeChat message to Wang Shitong to inquire about the situation. As soon as I sent the message, Wang Shitong called me via video. Chen Yuan frowned and picked up the phone. Aunt Tong. Chen Yuan, what happened to you? What did you do to Yang Ning? Based on Wang Shitong's understanding of Shen Yanning, there is no one else who can make Shen Yanning cry these days except Chen Yuan. Chen Yuan was stunned for a moment, feeling a bit like he was in trouble, and asked, Aunt Tong, do you know where she is now? Wang Shitong was speechless for a while. It's really you? She's been crying in my shop for half an hour, and I can't comfort her. She won't tell me anything when I ask her. Aren't you in the company? In the video, Wang Shitong saw Chen Yuan on the side of the road. Chen Yuan, I'm done with the company stuff and was just about to look for her. I called her just now but she didn't answer. Wang Shitong, I see, come here quickly. Chen Yuan, okay, I'll go over now. After hanging up the video, Chen Yuan immediately took a taxi to Mayun coffee shop. Chapter 22. There must be a big boss behind the scenes. Mayun Cafe. In the small private room on the second floor. Shen Yanning seemed to have cried until she had no more tears left, and she used a tissue to wipe the tear marks on her face. At this time, Wang Shitong came over with a bowl of ginger tea. You've cried enough, now it's time to tell me what happened. As he said that, he handed over the ginger tea. Shen Yanning took it while sobbing, drank 2 sips and put it aside. I confessed to him this afternoon, and he agreed to be with me. Later, he said that he had something to do at the company and had to go there, so I accompanied him, but he seemed very unhappy, so I got off halfway on my own accord, and he didn't even say a word to try to keep me. Wang Shitong, it's all your fault. You forced me to fall in love for no reason. What the hell is this? What? How did you get involved with me again? Wang Shitong looked aggrieved. Even if Chen Yuan wasn't the one I introduced to you, wouldn't you still be eager to confess your feelings to him later? It wouldn't be that fast. Shen Yanning said aggrievedly, and suddenly an idea came to her mind. Did I confess too quickly? Did I scare him? Wang Shitong nodded thoughtfully. Whether he was frightened or not, he must have some concerns. He came to me just now and asked where I was. I told him you had been crying here for a long time, and he said he would come over right away. When he gets here, you can have a good chat and talk about any concerns you have. Chen Yuan nodded gently, took a deep breath, and said with energy, I know, there are many customers downstairs, you go and greet them, I'm fine here. Okay, I'll go down first. But don't cry anymore. I'll give him a lecture when I see him later. Wang Shitong said this and was about to leave. Chen Yuan stood up and said, don't say anything too harsh. Don't scare him away again. Hearing this, Wang Shitong almost fainted. All right, I get it. When did you become so anxious about gains and losses? Wang Shitong went back downstairs, greeted a few regular customers, chatted with them for a while, and then prepared to go to the cashier. At this time, a familiar customer half-jokingly said, Mr. Wang, I don't think I've seen that local tycoon who sent flowers in the past half-month. What's going on? Wang Shitong smiled bitterly, how would I know? All right, hurry up and eat. In short, there's no way he and I can be together. The regular customer smiled and nodded, that's right, even if you are willing, you have to divorce your husband who went abroad. Wang Shitong smiled helplessly and shook her head, then returned to the cashier counter. Not long after she sat down, she saw Chen Yuan coming in. Chen Yuan, come with me first. Wang Shitong waved and took him to an empty corner. Chen Yuan, I just told you in the video that Yang Ning started crying when she came to me. She cried for half an hour. I have known her for 10 years, and I have never seen her so wronged. I don't know what's going on between you two, but I know Yang Ning is serious. She's in the third private room around the corner upstairs. When you go upstairs, don't hide anything you want to say. As long as you can say it, everything will be fine. Even if you tell her that you don't want to be with her and want her to give up, it doesn't matter. At most she'll be sad for a few days, and she'll get over it slowly. But if you're vague, it won't be good for her or you. Chen Yuan listened and nodded, Aunt Tong, I know what to do. Wang Shitong secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Can you tell me first, do you like her or not? I really like her. Chen Yuan thought seriously for a while and nodded, yes. Wang Shitong said, just your words are enough, go up. Chen Yuan went upstairs and soon arrived at the door of the third private room at the corner. The door is closed. Chen Yuan stood at the door, adjusted his breathing, raised his hand and looked at the door, Yang Ning, it's me. In the private room, Chen Yuan also adjusted her breathing and said, the door is not locked, just come in. As soon as he finished speaking, Chen Yuan opened the door and came in. Do you still have time to come to me when you have something to do at the company? Chen Yuan muttered. After all, I am not a girl in her early 20s, so I can't be too pretentious. You have to speak first when you should. Chen Yuan nodded gently and sat down next to her. It's just a small matter at the company, I went there and came back soon. Did you hear Aunt Tong say that you cried for a long time? Yang Ning, I'm sorry. When Chen Yuan heard this, her heart skipped a beat and she looked at Chen Yuan anxiously. What do you mean sorry? Are you breaking up with me? Seeing Chen Yuan's nervous look, Chen Yuan suddenly wanted to laugh. At this moment, it was hard to imagine that Chen Yuan was a billionaire female tycoon who dominated the investment world. When did I ever ask for a breakup? Chen Yuan frowned, then why do you say sorry? Chen Yuan said, I mean, I'm sorry for letting you suffer. Chen Yuan pursed her lips, okay, I'm not waiting for you to say sorry to me, just tell me your concerns, or tell me what you really think in your heart. Chen Yuan nodded solemnly, okay, then I'll tell you what's in my heart. First of all, I'm not someone who jokes about relationships or plays around with them. If I want to be in a relationship, I want to get married and be together for the rest of my life. In the afternoon, you told me that you wanted to be with me in the true sense, and I was happy in my heart. But I'm afraid you're just acting on impulse. Hearing this, Chen Yuan interrupted immediately and said, I didn't do it on impulse. I confess to you after careful consideration. If you are willing, I can get the marriage certificate with you as soon as the Civil Affairs Bureau opens on Monday. Chen Yuan looked into Chen Yuan's eyes, which showed sincerity. He believed that Chen Yuan was serious. With what you said, I believe you. Chen Yuan nodded. That's one reason. Second, I think I don't know you well enough. In fact, whether I'm with you or with someone else, I hope that both parties understand each other. Chen Yuan said, Shitong has briefly told you my basic situation. Is there anything else you want to know? Tell me, and I will explain it to you all at once today. Chen Yuan said, Aunt Tong told me that you got divorced 10 years ago, and then started your own business, until today, right? Shen Yanning nodded, yes. Chen Yuan continued, and Aunt Tong told me that your parents were both teachers. Before the divorce, you were also a teacher, right? Shen Yanning nodded, yes. My father is a high school teacher, my mother is a junior high school teacher, and I am an elementary school teacher. Chen Yuandao, well, you were born in an ordinary scholarly family. Hearing this, Shen Yanning immediately understood what Chen Yuan wanted to ask and said, you want to know how I could have so much wealth in just 10 years? Do you suspect that there is someone behind me? Chen Yuan had to admit that Shen Yanning was indeed smart. He nodded and said, that's right, if it was 30 years, or even only 20 years, I wouldn't have such doubts. Shen Yanning suddenly smiled, your question is indeed sharp. Well, since you want to know, then I will tell you. Chapter 23 thoroughly in depth. The person you think of does exist, but... Shen Yanning changed the subject and said sternly, it's definitely not the dirty relationship you think it is. Chen Yuan smiled slightly, Yang Ning, I never said that you had any dirty relationship with anyone, I just wanted to know more about you. Whether we are a couple now or husband and wife in the future, we can ignore each other's past, but we cannot be ignorant of each other's past. Shen Yanning nodded seriously, you are right. Okay, then I will tell you about my past 10 years. As she spoke, she picked up the still warm ginger tea in front of her and took 2 sips. Shetong told you about my relationship before. I don't know if it's detailed enough. I'll tell you again in person now. I never had a romantic relationship when I was a student. As you know, my parents are both teachers and they are quite strict in this regard. After graduating from university, I went straight to work. At the time, I didn't think about how old I was. I just wanted to do my job well first. A few years passed and I was already 27 years old. My parents were panicking and the school leaders were busy arranging things. I was very touched and we got married not long after. I was married for more than a year but still not pregnant, and my parents-in-law didn't say anything, after all, I was still young. But after 2 years, the neighbors started to make gossips, and my parents-in-law gradually lost their good attitude and quarreled from time to time. I got divorced in the 3rd year, which was when I was 30, and I quit my job at the school. Since then, I have been single and have never been with any man or had any affair with anyone. You can rest assured about that. Chen Yuan nodded and waited for Shen Yanning to continue. Shen Yanning briefly adjusted her breathing, took 2 sips of ginger tea, and then continued, I just talked about feelings, now I will tell you about work. After I resigned, I didn't know what I was going to do. I just wanted to stay away from trouble. From time to time, we go to Qinghu Park, the place where we sat in the afternoon and just stare blankly. That's where I met Shetong. Let's not talk about what happened between us today. It was probably one day 2 months later. The weather was nice, but the wind was quite strong. I didn't have enough clothes on, so I thought about going home. That's when I met him. He was walking in the park that day, and his assistant handed him a document. It was windy that day, and a few sheets of paper were not clamped firmly and blew away. I instinctively ran to help him pick them up. He probably saw that I was thinking about something, so he started chatting with me. Then he showed me the document in his hand, which was a research report of a startup company, and asked me if he could invest in this company. I'm a teacher, how can I know anything about investment? But I still took a serious look at it. Then what? Chen Yuan asked with interest. Shen Yanning said, I said I could invest, and he just smiled and said to me, you know what? Everyone in the team is against this project. After hearing this, I quickly apologized and said I was just talking nonsense. But he smiled and said that he also thought it was possible to vote. Chen Yuan asked in confusion, what project? Shen Yanning said, a person who works in logistics. Chen Yuan looked curious, how is that company doing now? Shen Yanning smiled and thought that this was also a masterpiece of hers. She said, Pig Logistics. What? Chen Yuan was shocked. Are you talking about the Xiaozhu Logistics that went public in the first half of the year? Shen Yanning raised her eyebrows proudly, yes, it's that little piggy logistics. Chen Yuan said, Xiaozhu Logistics' current market value is over 100 billion. They invested a lot of money in it, right? Right. Shen Yanning nodded, we invested 200 million in the early stage, and then we invested in several rounds later, a total of more than 7 billion. But this has nothing to do with me, so let's get back to the topic. That person is the chairman of the board of directors of Gaohua Group, Lin Li. Chen Yuan's pupils trembled. Is it him? Xin Yanning frowned slightly. Gaohua Group plays an important role in Jiangsu, but it has always been low-key. Many people have never even heard of this group. The chairman of the board of directors rarely goes out, and there is very little public information about Lin Li. The only photos he has are of him when he was young. Not to mention outsiders, even the middle and senior management of the group's subsidiaries may not be able to recognize him, let alone some of the grandson companies. Why, do you know him? Xin Yanning asked. Chen Yuan nodded. Yes, he gave an internal speech at our school 3 years ago. Xin Yanning said, that's about right. Chen Yuan Dao, by the way, you met him in the park that time, and then he brought you into the industry. Xin Yanning shook her head. Not really, I didn't know who he was at first. I met him again the next day. I felt that fate was really amazing. He also felt that I had a connection with him, so he brought me into the industry. He gave me 100 million as startup capital. But don't get me wrong, he didn't teach me anything himself. It was another woman who taught me. Chen Yuan frowned slightly. Who is it? Xin Yanning didn't seem to want to mention this person, and said hesitantly, her name is Chen Yuan. Chen Yuan noticed a subtle change in her expression and felt that there was something else going on. He asked, she brought you into the industry. She should be both a teacher and a friend to you. Why do you only have Aunt Tong as your best friend? Because she betrayed Mr. Lin. Chen Yuan exclaimed, is there such a thing? This Chen Yuan you are talking about should be Mr. Lin's confidant, right? Xin Yanning nodded sadly. I don't want to mention this woman for now. If you want to hear about her, I'll tell you later when I have time. Do you know everything about me now? Do you have any other concerns? Chen Yuan thought about it and shook his head. No more. Xin Yanning said, now you know me better, right? Chen Yuan lowered his eyebrows in embarrassment. It's deep, thoroughly deep. So is it my turn to say it now? Xin Yanning frowned slightly. What do you want to say? Chen Yuan said, of course I'm talking about my past. Xin Yanning couldn't help but laugh when she heard this. You're a fresh graduate, a blank slate, what past could you have? Oh, yes, you had an ex-girlfriend, and we were just holding hands. Chen Yuan's face flushed. Are you starting to ridicule me now? Xin Yanning shook her head repeatedly. No, I was just kidding you. By the way, let's be serious. Shitong told me a few days ago that your adoptive father picked you up on the roadside. You should have known about this a long time ago, right? Have you never thought about finding your biological parents in these years? At least ask them. You are not missing any limbs, and you don't have any congenital diseases. You are fine. Why did they abandon you? Chapter 24. The landlord is shocked. I thought about it before, but then I stopped thinking about it because I felt it was meaningless. So what if you knew? The facts cannot be changed. Chen Yuan shrugged, looking indifferent. Xin Yanning asked, when your adoptive father found you, you didn't have anything else on you? Like a note, a keepsake, or something like that. Xin Yanning thought, maybe his parents did that out of helplessness. If it is out of helplessness, and you definitely want to see your child again in the future, you will definitely leave something behind. However, Chen Yuan shook his head and said, I asked, but there is nothing. Xin Yanning murmured, it seems that he is really determined to abandon you. Chen Yuan spread his hands and said, so I don't care. If they really abandoned me for some unavoidable reason, I might be able to find it with my belongings, but the problem now is that I don't have anything. Xin Yanning agreed, it's better not to look for such cruel parents. We should always look forward, and let's not talk about unhappy things. Millimeter, I want a hug. Having said that, Xin Yanning stood up and opened her arms. Chen Yuan smiled slightly, stood up and held her in his arms. Xin Yanning said softly, can you feel my sincerity? Chen Yuan nodded slightly and said, Xin Yanning said, you have to promise me 2 things. Chen Yuan, okay, you go ahead. Xin Yanning, don't fall in love with other people in the future. If there are girls who like you, you must tell them right away that you have a girlfriend. Chen Yuan, having you in this life is enough. Xin Yanning, also, if we have a fight someday, you are not allowed to use my age as an excuse. You are not allowed to say hurtful words like old woman or old witch. Chen Yuan said affectionately, from now on, you and I will be one as husband and wife. You are me and I am you. If I scold you, I am scolding myself. I am just young, not stupid." Hearing this, Chen Yuan couldn't help but laugh. She took her chin away from Chen Yuan's shoulder, looked at him lovingly, and her red lips instinctively opened slightly. Chen Yuan was also looking at her, and the next second, his eyes fell on Chen Yuan's red lips. Then Chen Yuan stood on tiptoe and gave him a passionate kiss. Just as the two of them were gradually losing themselves in the world, Wang Shitong suddenly opened the door and came in. The two were startled and quickly let go of each other. Chen Yuan felt a little embarrassed. After all, she was Chen Yuan's best friend. He simply turned his head to the side and covered his mouth with his fist to hide his embarrassment. Chen Yuan's face flushed, and she looked at Wang Shitong, feeling very depressed. "Why don't you come at any other time? Why do you have to come at this time?" Wang Shitong was also extremely embarrassed and explained, "I was just worried that you guys would have an unpleasant chat and start fighting. I never thought you would do this." Sorry, please continue." Wang Shitong bowed and repeatedly made invitation gestures, then left with an apologetic look on her face. After Wang Shitong closed the door, Chen Yuan and Chen Yuan looked at each other silently and smiled. Then, Chen Yuan bit her red lips and asked in a low voice, "Continue." Chen Yuan licked his lips with satisfaction and hooked Chen Yuan's slender waist. So, the two of them started to act shamelessly again. After 2 days of spending time together over the weekend, Chen Yuan and Chen Yuan's relationship quickly heated up. Monday morning. Chen Yuan was getting ready to go to work. As soon as he arrived downstairs of the apartment building, he saw his landlord, Uncle Chen, looking dusty and as if he had suffered some kind of blow. Compared to his usual high-spirited state, he was like two different people. "Uncle Chen, are you okay?" Chen Yuan stepped forward and asked. Uncle Chen shook his head and sighed in frustration. "I'm fine, you go to work." "Are you really okay?" Chen Yuan was a little worried because Uncle Chen looked really bad. "Fine." Uncle Chen waved his hand and sat down on the flower bed nearby. It was late autumn now, and at around 7 in the morning, the flower beds were still covered with dew. "He can even sit like this, Chen Yuan doesn't believe that he is okay." Sure enough, in the next second, Uncle Chen's body tilted and he was about to fall down. "Uncle Chen!" Chen Yuan was quick to act and immediately supported him. "Uncle Chen!" Chen Yuan called out again, but seeing that he didn't respond, he thought something was wrong. He quickly took out his cell phone and called emergency services. Chen Yuan didn't have the phone number of Uncle Chen's family, so he was a little anxious, but he had to rush to work. After calling the emergency number, Chen Yuan called Honglu again. "Manager Hong, can I take half a day off? My landlord suddenly fainted, and I suspect he had a stroke. I don't have his family's phone number, so I have to take him to the hospital." On the other end of the phone, Honglu nodded repeatedly. "Okay, no problem, you have the final say now." Chen Yuan didn't know what the second half of her sentence meant. After he hung up the phone, the ambulance arrived within a few minutes. Chen Yuan followed him up. After arriving at the hospital and receiving emergency treatment, Uncle Chen regained consciousness. The doctor said it was nothing serious and I could go home after some rest. Chen Yuan was confused and asked the doctor, "It's not a stroke?" Before the doctor could speak, Uncle Chen said depressedly, "You bastard, if I have a stroke, will no one urge you to pay the rent in the future?" Chen Yuan smiled bitterly. "Uncle Chen, I didn't mean that. I'm just scared." Uncle Chen nodded and said seriously, "Okay, I know you have good intentions. You saved my life. I, Chen Dasan, am not the kind of ungrateful person. You have already paid the rent for the past 6 months, so I will not refund it. I will waive the rent for the next 6 months." Hearing this, Chen Yuan felt a little unbelievable and asked suspiciously, "Uncle Chen, you are not just saying this on impulse, are you?" Uncle Chen frowned and said angrily, "What? You want me to sign for you? That's not necessary." Chen Yuan smiled and waved his hands, then changed the subject and asked curiously, "Uncle Chen, you are usually in good health, why did you suddenly?" Hearing this, Uncle Chen couldn't help but sigh. "This is not the place to talk. You haven't had breakfast yet, right? Let's find a place to sit down." "Okay." Chen Yuan nodded readily, since he had taken half a day off anyway. Afterwards, the two went to a breakfast shop near the hospital. Uncle Chen ordered some food and wanted to have some wine, but was stopped by Chen Yuan. How can you drink alcohol right after leaving the hospital? Uncle Chen nodded with emotion. As they ate, Uncle Chen started to get down to business. I divorced early in life and have 2 daughters. The older one lives with me, and the younger one lives with her mother. After my eldest daughter graduated with a master's degree, she went abroad and started a family there. It's been almost 10 years, and she has only been back home twice. Fortunately, my youngest daughter is still in Jiangsu. But my little daughter doesn't like me. Today is her birthday. I know I am not qualified to celebrate her birthday with her, so I thought I would celebrate it for her in advance and let her know that as a father, she is always in my heart. So, I excitedly prepared a table of dishes and invited her to have a meal at home. It happened to be Sunday, so it would not affect her work. She was reluctant, saying that she was working overtime. She worked so hard overtime, and I couldn't let the food on my table go to waste, so I packed a lunchbox and sent it to her company. I happened to run into her leaving the company gate. As he spoke, Uncle Chen suddenly choked up. Chen Yuan silently took out a tissue and handed it over, and asked in a low voice, "She didn't drop all the food you brought, did she?" Chapter 25, Past Events. Uncle Chen shook his head. Although she doesn't like me, she won't make me so miserable. Hearing this, Chen Yuan was even more confused. What happened that made you angry from yesterday to today? Uncle Chen said helplessly, it was her mother. She was the one who threw the food I cooked on the ground and brought up the old matter again. Chen Yuan nodded. Although he didn't know what happened between the couple, he knew that it must be something serious that could make Uncle Chen so angry. Uncle Chen was so angry because of the past. Chen Yuan was too embarrassed to ask further questions, so he said soothingly, Uncle Chen, since it has been so many years, there is no need to be so angry. If something bad happened to you, wouldn't she be the one who gloated over it? Uncle Chen agreed with him. You're right. In fact, I figured it out when I came out of the hospital just now. You've misunderstood me for most of my life, so it doesn't matter if you misunderstand me for a few more years. He seemed to have figured it out, but as soon as he finished speaking, Uncle Chen began to sigh, Chen Yuan, I feel so miserable. Chen Yuan looked at him sympathetically and said, why don't you tell me about your troubles? Uncle Chen nodded, then let's start with why we are getting divorced. Chen Yuan nodded and waited for the next words seriously. Uncle Chen went on to say, in my early years, I was also a businessman. As you know, there are many business social events. Some customers like to patronize brothels, and I can't help but accompany them. In fact, the child's mother also understands this. Until I met Wang Kui. When talking about Wang Kui, Chen Yuan found that Uncle Chen's mood suddenly became low, as if he remembered something sad. Master Chen, this Wang Kui, could she be a girl from a brothel? Uncle Chen raised his eyes and said with all his strength, yes, she is a girl from the entertainment industry, but she is different from those people. Chen Yuan wanted to laugh when he heard this, as if every amorous man thought so he asked casually, so you two have sparks of love? Uncle Chen frowned and said angrily, you think so too? I, Chen Dasan, am not that kind of person at all. I have a wife and 2 beautiful daughters. How could I abandon my wife and daughters to love a woman from the entertainment industry? Chen Yuan was frustrated and asked, what's going on? Uncle Chen sighed and said slowly, she is from the countryside. She dropped out of school at the age of 16 and went to work in a factory at the age of 17. Her parents are farmers at home. She has a younger brother who is in the 3rd grade of junior high school. He ranks among the top in grades and was admitted to the key high school in their county. Her family, the village, and the school teachers all said that the child will definitely be admitted to a key university in the future. Wang Kui is also very optimistic about her younger brother, but she also knows that whether it is high school or college, it will cost a lot of money. Every month when I get my salary, I only keep a small amount and send the rest back home. She told me that her salary plus the money from farming and her father's occasional odd jobs were enough to support her brother's education. She worked hard, but she thought it was all wonderful. Fate is like this sometimes. Whenever people feel good, misfortune will come. She was 20 years old when her brother was in his senior year of high school. It was at that time that she collapsed in the factory and was taken to the hospital where she was diagnosed with stomach cancer. It was already in the advanced stage and the doctors did not even plan to treat her. She knew she didn't have much time left, but her brother had just finished his senior year of high school and she didn't want him to be unable to continue his studies because of tuition fees. She heard that the nightclub had a very high income, and she wanted to earn as much tuition as possible for her brother in the last few months of her life. Hearing this, Chen Yuan couldn't help but doubt, "Uncle Chen, first of all, I have to make it clear that I don't mean to look down on them. I just want to know, is what she said true? Is she deliberately trying to gain your sympathy?" Uncle Chen frowned and said, "Don't interrupt me. Let me finish what I have to say first." "Okay." Chen Yuan nodded, "You tell me what you want to say." Uncle Chen's eyes flashed with sadness, and he continued, "I didn't know anything about her at first. It was that day when she was not feeling well and was forced to be touched by a customer. I stepped in to stop her, and then she treated me to a meal to thank me, so I heard about her. I'm also someone who frequents nightclubs. Of course I know those girls like to make up lies to gain sympathy and make more money. But I don't think she's acting, because that state really doesn't look like acting. But you can't say that no one can act like this. What if she is born to act? If it's true, I will definitely help her. I remember it very clearly. The next morning I checked with someone I knew and it was indeed true. I choked up at the time, and I felt indescribable. I couldn't bear it, so I went to the nightclub to find her that afternoon. I told her to quit her job and to pay for her brother's tuition, whether it's 30,000, 50,000, or 100,000 yuan. You can get treatment first. She won't do it, no matter what. Just won't take my money for nothing. I was so anxious. I'm telling you, you'll be my mistress for 20,000 a month. She was dumbfounded. She knew I was deliberately helping her and was reluctant to agree. I told her that your health is getting worse day by day. Are you sure you can earn back all the money your brother spent on college before you die? After I persuaded her, she agreed, but asked me not to tell her family about her illness or her job at the nightclub. When she died, I could just notify her family to come and collect her body. I agree. So, I rented a house for her to live in. She was in poor health, and I was worried about her living alone. After get off work, when I had nothing to do, I would go to see her, buy her some food and daily necessities, help her go to the hospital to get medicine, etc. I'm alone, and I can't split myself. I'm with Huang Kui, so naturally, things will go wrong at home, you know. Chen Yuan listened and nodded. Uncle Chen said, "My wife noticed something at the time. One day she followed me and knew that I had a mistress outside. I explained it to her and even showed her Huang Kui's medical records, but she didn't believe it. She said that I arranged it all to deal with her one day. I saw that she couldn't make sense, so I didn't bother to pay attention to her. We kept arguing for 2 months, and within a few days we got divorced. The eldest daughter belongs to me, and the younger daughter belongs to her. From now on, we have nothing to do with each other." Chen Yuan asked, "What about Huang Kui later?" Uncle Chen sighed, "About half a month after my wife and I divorced, Huang Kui died." Hearing this, Chen Yuan couldn't help but sigh, "It's really pitiful." Then he asked, "Huang Kui is dead. Auntie should believe that you are just helping Huang Kui, and not what she thinks, right? In fact, you can remarry." Uncle Chen was so angry that he slammed the table repeatedly. This is where the problem lies. Chapter 26: Promotion and Salary Increase. She doesn't believe it at all. Uncle Chen was so angry that he gritted his teeth. She said that Huang Kui deserved to die. She also said that I killed Huang Kui, and whoever wants to be with me in the future will also be killed by me. Now that we've come to this, do you think she will remarry me? Chen Yuan said, "That shouldn't happen, but even if she insists that you are keeping a mistress outside, does your little daughter think so too?" Uncle Chen slammed the table again. "You are right, she and her mother were both born in the year of the donkey. More than 10 years have passed, and they are still firm in their views. Tell me, do you think I am wronged?" Chen Yuan smacked his lips and said, "If you put it that way, it's a bit aggrieved indeed." Uncle Chen's eyes were full of tears. "For so many years, I have said these words to no one except the mother and daughter. You are the first one who has kept them in my heart for so many years. Now that I say them out, I feel much better." The other side. The 26th floor of Jingfeng Building. Zhao Mingyu drafted the email at hand and called Hong Lu to her office. "Secretary Hong, go call Chen Yuan over." "Chen Yuan. Chen Yuan has asked for leave." Zhao Mingyu's heart tightened. "Ask for leave? Are you sick?" Honglu shook her head. It wasn't him who was sick. It was his landlord who was sick. He couldn't contact the landlord's family, so he took the landlord to the hospital himself. Is that so? Zhao Mingyu breathed a sigh of relief. Honglu said, Mr. Zhao, is there anything you want me to tell you over the phone? Zhao Mingyu waved her hand. No, don't worry, wait until he comes to the company. Honglu said, okay, I'll get busy first. In the breakfast shop. By the time Chen Yuan finished breakfast with Uncle Qin and listened to his stories, it was almost 11 o'clock. I had to go to work at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I didn't feel the need to go home. After saying goodbye to Uncle Qin, I simply went straight to the company. When I arrived at the company, it was just time to get off work at noon. The elevator was on the company floor, and as soon as the door opened, Zhao Mingyu and Honglu were seen. Boss Zhao, Manager Hong. Chen Yuan nodded and greeted. Zhao Mingyu nodded slightly as a response and asked, have you eaten? Chen Yuan nodded, I have eaten. Zhao Mingyu said without hesitation, then eat some more. Chen Yuan was stunned, Boss Zhao, I've eaten. Zhao Mingyu said, then eat some more. Chen Yuan. Honglu winked at Chen Yuan secretly, Mr. Zhao has something to tell you about work. If you don't want to eat, just listen. Okay. Chen Yuan responded, and then went downstairs with the two of them. Then the three of them went to the restaurant where they had dinner last time. Zhao Mingyu was a regular customer and she found a seat and sat down directly. At the rectangular table, Zhao Mingyu sat on one side, and Chen Yuan and Honglu sat on the other. Before the food was served, Zhao Mingyu said, Chen Yuan, what did you call Honglu at the elevator entrance just now? Chen Yuan thought about it for a moment and blurted out, Manager Hong. Zhao Mingyu said, she is my secretary now, and from now on she will be called Secretary Hong. Hearing this, Chen Yuan suddenly remembered that Zhao Mingyu sent Secretary Yang to the e-commerce department, intending to incubate her into an internet celebrity, and now she was promoting Honglu to be her secretary. Congratulations, Secretary Hong. Chen Yuan turned and smiled at Honglu. Honglu also responded with a smile. Then Chen Yuan asked Zhao Mingyu, Boss Zhao, where is our marketing director? Now is the critical moment for the plan to be implemented, we cannot be without a leader. Zhao Mingyu nodded. You are right, so I decided to let you be the supervisor. The probation period is 3 months, and the base salary will be increased by 2,000. After the probation period, if you are still competent, the base salary will be increased by another 1,000. Your original base salary was 5,000 a month. With this 3,000, your base salary is 8,000. Add performance bonuses and department bonuses, and you can get at least 15,000 a month. This is the lower limit. As for the upper limit, that depends on how much profit you can bring to the company. If Chen Yuan said he was not tempted by such generous treatment, he would probably not even believe himself. Mr. Zhao, I just joined the company. Is it not good to be a supervisor in such a short time? People who don't know may think that I am using a backdoor. Let alone some old colleagues in our marketing department, I am afraid that some of them will not be convinced. Chen Yuan expressed his concerns. Honglu smiled and said on behalf of Zhao Mingyu, Chen Yuan, you worry too much. No matter who gets promoted and raised in our company, it's all based on their own abilities. No one will say anything. Secondly, our colleagues in the marketing department will not say anything either. Why? Chen Yuan was a little puzzled. Honglu said, our marketing department also has performance bonuses. Before you came, they only got 300 to 500 yuan a month, and at most 1,000 yuan. But since your plan was implemented, based on our sales volume over the past few days, they estimated that each person can get at least 2,000 yuan in bonuses. They don't care when their leaders join the company, they only care whether their leaders can lead them. Chen Yuan, do you have the confidence to take them off? Chen Yuan grinned, I may not be confident about other things, but when it comes to this, I am confident. Honglu said, that's all. Chen Yuan nodded. Zhao Mingyu added, Secretary Hong just said all the good things. Now I want to say a few words in advance. The marketing department is an important department of our company. Any operation may affect our products and even the fate of the company. I hope you will not be careless and will not disappoint me and the company's expectations of you. Chen Yuan took a deep breath and nodded seriously, don't worry, Mr. Zhao, I will definitely not let you and the company down. Okay, I feel relieved when you say that. I have asked the Human Resources Department to send out your appointment email at 12 o'clock. Everyone in the company will receive it by then. As Zhao Mingyu was talking, she saw the waiter coming with the food and said, "Let's eat first." The other side. The company's marketing department. In the director's office, Cao Dang was eating takeout when suddenly an internal company email popped up in the lower right corner of his computer. Notice on the appointment and removal of the head of marketing department. Cao Dang was stunned, immediately put down his chopsticks and quickly opened the email. The content of the email is roughly as follows: Chen Yuan, the former member of the marketing department, will be the head of the marketing department from today. Honglu is relieved of his position as the head of the marketing department and will be the secretary of the CEO's office from today. Cao Dang was not surprised that Honglu was appointed as Zhao Mingyu's secretary. After Yang Zhen was transferred to the e-commerce department, Zhao Mingyu had greeted him and was ready to ask him for someone. However, Zhao Mingyu did not mention a word about Chen Yuan's appointment as the head of the marketing department. Why? Why should he? He's only been here for a few days. He hasn't even met all the people in the company yet, and is already the supervisor. Cao Dang questioned the email. He didn't even eat the food on the table. He just threw it into the trash can beside him, then picked up his phone and called Yarn Li, the director of the Human Resources Department. Chapter 27. Cao Dang is doing bad things. Hello, Lao Yang, it's me. Did you know that Chen Yuan is the head of the marketing department? There was a hint of questioning in Cao Dang's words. On the other end of the phone, Yarn Li replied, "Yes, I have read the email in advance." Cao Dang gritted his teeth in frustration. "You knew that and you didn't tell me. Are we still brothers?" Yarn Li looked aggrieved. "No, you don't know about this. Mr. Zhao made the decision himself." Cao Dang was speechless for a moment. Yarn Li suddenly realized something at this time, frowned slightly, and reminded, "Lao Cao, the marketing department is under the market department. President Zhao will directly bypass you. You have to pay attention. I think I heard that you and Chen Yuan are not getting along. Chen Yuan is now President Zhao's favorite. Brother, we are in the workplace. A real man can bend and stretch. Sometimes you have to bow your head." Bow your head? Cao Dang snorted coldly. "Why should I bow my head? Not to mention that he was a new employee before. Even if he is a supervisor now, I am still his immediate superior. He doesn't take me seriously, but I still have to bow my head to him." "Do I, Cao Dang, have no face?" Yarn Li said, "But after all, he is Mr. Zhao's favorite now." Cao Dang looked dissatisfied. "What's wrong with Mr. Zhao? Can Mr. Zhao appoint people based on personal connections?" Yarn Li said, "So what? Do you still want to go against Mr. Zhao?" Cao Dang was speechless again. Seeing that he hadn't spoken for a long time, Yarn Li comforted him again. "Okay, Lao Cao, it's not a big deal, just think about it. I haven't finished my meal yet, so I won't talk to you for now." Cao Dang looked at the hung-up call and threw the phone aside. Mad. Cao Dang muttered something and went to the window behind him to get some fresh air. His eyes subconsciously looked downstairs. Just then I saw Zhao Mingyu, Honglu and Chen Yuan coming back from outside. Along the way, Chen Yuan gestured with his hands, and no one knew what he was saying. But looking at the expressions of Zhao Mingyu and Honglu, they seemed to be very happy listening to it. Cao Dang gritted his teeth until the three men walked into the building. The other side. Chen Yuan and Zhao Mingyu were just about to get on the elevator when a call rang on their cell phones. Seeing that it was Chen Yuan calling, he quickly said, "Boss Zhao, you guys go up first, I'll take a call." Zhao Mingyu didn't say anything, just nodded, and then went upstairs. Chen Yuan took his cell phone and went to the corner of the lobby to answer the call. "Yang Ning, it's me. Why did you answer the phone so late?" Chen Yanning seemed a little resentful on the other end of the phone. Chen Yuan explained, "I was just reporting to my boss." "What do you want to talk to me about?" Chen Yanning said angrily, "Why, can't you look for my boyfriend when you have nothing to do? Or do you forget about me when you are at work and looking at the beautiful woman next to you?" Chen Yuan smiled bitterly. "How can that be possible? I don't seem to have anything to do after get off work tonight. How about we have dinner together?" Chen Yanning said, "Okay, then I'll pick you up tonight." "Okay." Chen Yuan agreed immediately. "Then I'll go to work first." "Well, go to work," Chen Yanning said with a smile. After hanging up the phone, Wang Li, the secretary beside him, said, "Mr. Shen, didn't you have an appointment with the CEO of Chen Company tonight?" Shen Yanning waved her hand and said, "Push it for me." Pushed? Wang Li looked embarrassed. "No, Mr. Shen, it's very difficult to make an appointment with the CEO of Chen. You made an appointment several times before he agreed. If you suddenly stand him up now, you won't have a chance to make an appointment again in the future." Of course Shen Yanning knew about it, and after thinking for a while, she said, "Just tell him, you said my boyfriend asked me out, I can't not go. Is this okay?" Wang Li frowned. He is a workaholic. He doesn't like people abandoning their work for personal matters like this. Shen Yanning said, "It's okay, just do as I say." "All right." Wang Li sighed helplessly and turned around to notify. Jingfeng Building, Tianlanlan Company. As soon as Chen Yuan returned to his department, his colleagues stood up and applauded. "Manager Chen, congratulations. Manager Chen, we'll ask you to take good care of us from now on." Chen Yuan smiled and nodded, "I'm happy for you. I'm grateful for the appreciation of Mr. Zhao and the trust of all my colleagues. If I do something wrong in the future, please forgive me." The marketing department was delighted. Cao Dang was standing in the distance. Seeing Chen Yuan's smug look, he snorted coldly, turned around and went back to the office. As soon as Chen Yuan sat down, the phone on the table rang. "Manager Chen, come to my office for a moment." Chen Yuan frowned, recognizing that it was Cao Dang's voice, and that his tone was unfriendly, so he replied coldly, "Okay, I'll be right there." No matter what, the marketing department is still under the leadership of Cao, and there is no reason for them not to go if their boss summons them. Soon, Chen Yuan arrived at the door of Cao Dang's office. The door was open, but Chen Yuan still knocked symbolically. Cao Dang lowered his head and looked at the documents on the table, as if he hadn't heard anything at all. Chen Yuan's mouth curled up, knowing that Cao Dang was trying to intimidate him. But he didn't buy it and turned around to leave. Cao Dang then became anxious and looked up and asked, "Why did you leave?" Chen Yuan then turned around and said, "I saw that you seemed very busy, so I didn't dare to disturb you. I thought I would come back later." Having said that, Chen Yuan walked in. "Don't stand, sit." Cao Dang raised his hand and said. Chen Yuan nodded slightly, sat down and waited for Cao Dang to speak. Cao Dang was not in a hurry. After looking at Chen Yuan, he buried his head in the documents and said as he read, "Congratulations, you have been promoted to supervisor so quickly. If you count it, you are the fastest promoted among the grassroots employees." Chen Yuan smiled faintly, "It's all thanks to the leadership's cultivation." Hearing this, Cao Dang couldn't help but frown secretly. He didn't know whether the leader Chen Yuan was referring to was himself or Zhao Mingyu. "But I think Chen Yuan would never flatter me, he must be referring to Zhao Mingyu." Deliberately saying leader instead of directly saying Mr. Zhao is because he wants to have enough room to maneuver. Cao Dang looked at Chen Yuan with scrutiny. He never thought that this newly graduated college student would have such a mind. He couldn't find any loopholes in Chen Yuan, so he just got straight to the point. "Manager Chen, the marketing department is still under the management of me, the marketing director, right?" Chen Yuan nodded. "Of course, hasn't the marketing department always been under the jurisdiction of the marketing department since the day it was established?" Cao Dang said, "That's good to know. In that case, let me tell you, now is a critical time for the company's development. The reputation of the product and the company, in addition to the product, the rest depends entirely on your marketing department. For the development of the company, all departments are working overtime, and your marketing department should bear the brunt of it. I will make a temporary rule. Starting tomorrow, the start time will be half an hour earlier and the end time will be half an hour later. This is normal working hours. Apart from this, overtime must be worked every day, and it must not be less than 2 hours. Notify them now." Cao Dang waved his hand after he finished speaking.